Hello, SMITE fans, and welcome back to the SMITE Summer Masters event, day number 2, brought to us by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. Make sure that you are making the most of your Prime membership by linking your Amazon Prime over to your Twitch accounts. That way you can get free new games every single month. The catalog updates with new content out there, plus content in the games that you are already playing. And then use your Prime membership to get other kinds of great things like free movies, free music, shipping, and more. Thank you so much to Prime Gaming for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League and continuing to power us here in the SMITE Summers Masters. My name is J. Mac Tucker. I've got Charlie Relly joining me on the desk. We are now at the halfway point of the day. Our first 2 sets are done, and we move in to some of our maybe kind of close matchups, though that last one was a little bit closer than maybe some fans were bargaining for between the Kings and the Gilded Gladiators, at least in that very first game. Now we get to jump in to the #1 EU SCC team of Hex Mambo, taking on the Solar Scarabs, who have been on a little bit of a downward trend as of recent, though, Trelly.
Yeah, with a little bit of roster changes, they've been trying to get their footing, and notably Hex Mambo in the first phase of the SCC weren't looking too good, but I think they certainly found their footing in this phase, and they've been on top for a reason, so definitely should be a different style of matchup. When I think of both of these teams, completely different play styles, right? The Mambo are looking to farm until late game, whereas Solar Scarabs used to have this play style about them where they were getting active in the early, but I think these things might clash a little bit in this matchup here.
It's definitely been a little bit shaky for the Solar Scarabs, but Hex Mambo have been able to find their stride. They went with a 5-0 streak, at least through Phase 2 of the SCC, so not dropping a single set to anybody else within their respective region. And a lot of that off the back of their solo laner. Deathwalker, who has always been a pioneer in that solo lane for new types of metas. Trixtank would normally be the one, the support player that we're talking about, but instead it's Rottwen subbing in for him at this event. And then also have to notably mention that Dzoni will be playing from home, so will not be playing in the studio with the remainder of the team. So that thing kind of opens up some other discussions and questions. When we talk about teams like the Camelot Kings with Big Man Tings playing from home as well, we always talk, maybe does that change some of the picks that you end up playing out on this land? Do you think, at least for Dzoni, that maybe changes up what he kind of goes to, Trelly?
Certainly could be. I mean, there's a lot of these high skill cap characters that Dzoni does love, but I imagine Loki's not that difficult to play on land. I mean, on ping rather. So there's a few different gods that he likes to go to that I imagine aren't going to be that difficult. Aren't going to hinder his performance too much. So it certainly could come into play, and they might have to pick and ban accordingly. But he's been around the scene for a while. I don't think it's going to matter too much.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back to classic Dzoni style of play, Loki comes to mind, Bakasura, Kali, Huang. Those are the 3 gods
no skill shots
he was running just amok in the SCC, the SOC, whatever division that he was in, even including sometimes over in the SPL. Those are some of the kind of pivotal gods that I think of with Dzoni to try and be a real hard carry for his team. He was unstoppable during his earlier times, had a little bit of a stunt during at least the SPL time, but back in the SCC, Dzoni and pretty much the entirety of Hex Mambo have been looking not unstoppable, kind of because they have been. 5-0, as I mentioned, the #1 SCC team, kind of on a resurgence from their less than great Phase 1 at least, Trelly.
Yeah, but now that they have figured out their identity and how they would like to play this style of play, I think they'll be looking a lot cleaner forward. And given the fact that the Scarabs were just the SPL team that unfortunately was able to fall to an SCC team during the last Masters, I think there's a lot of weight on their shoulders here. And I'm sure that is weighing in because not only did they lose last time and during that last Masters tournament, they also have, Sam for Soccer, who they've been trying to figure out how he meshes in with the new team and, how that's going to affect their team dynamics. So their mentals probably need to, strengthen up here for this match. But if they go in and play their style of SMITE that we know they can, they shouldn't have too much to worry about.
Yeah, I think this will be a very fun matchup to watch, at least. I'm going to keep my eyes specifically over in the solo lane with Deathwalker versus Scary D. But before we even continue talking about Scary D and the rest of the Scarabs, we do have Mifflin standing by for a pregame interview with Hex Mambo.
Well, I'm in the booth here with the SCC representatives, Hex Mambo, going up against the Solar Scarabs, and I've heard some rumblings from your squad. Confidence is the name of the game. I was given 95% odds. You win this one?
Yeah, 95, and just because we have a sub, would have been 100 without, probably. Because, so they're not very good.
And when you say, not very good, are they the weakest team in the SPL, or are you thinking, maybe, second weakest? Give me, the bottom 2 ranking.
Bottom 2? I could do the whole thing, but sure, I'll go easy on you. I think Scarabs are just the worst, and then it's I'm going to say only Warriors. I like Vote, I like Cuba, but goddamn, they suck.
I am loving the confidence in this booth. Talk me through the Solar Scarabs jersey here. Is this facetious? You just kind of clowning on them right now?
No, I'm just going to be playing for them, actually. Oh, okay. I'm just here, infiltrating and all, but
Understood.
That's my real team over there. That's what I'm saying. They're dog shit too, you know. Like I gotta improve them a bit.
Loving it. I love when teams are willing to talk smack before the games. Keep your eyes on this one. I've been hearing there's some explosive sets coming your way.
Explosive sets and explosive interview, to say the least, from Deathwalker, the solo lane of Hex Mambo, saying that, at least in his opinion, the Scarabs may just be the worst team in the SPL, and that's maybe at least the best opportunity for an SCC team to try and find themselves a win. But that is a lot of confidence and a lot of smack talk. Charlie, I hope it does not come back to bite Deathwalker and Hex Mambo.
I mean, I just want to see a good competitive set. I'm always a fan of some friendly smack talk, of course, you know, just getting in the heads of the opposition. And hey, if Deathwalker can back it up, more power to him. You know, he's feeling confident. I'm sure it'll show on the battleground, right?
Yeah, we'll have to see if Deathwalker and the rest of Hex Mambo can pull it together. They are going against the Solar Scarabs. As mentioned, the Solar Scarabs have gone through a little bit of a recent roster shakeup, losing Scream in the jungle, but still picking up Sam for soccer. You know, it's not like they lost, like, you know, an amazing jungler and then kind of picked up somebody from the SCC to kind of fill themselves in. They did end up picking up Sam for soccer, a former world champion jungler himself, but they have been having some trouble kind of re-identifying themselves. The Solar Scarabs were kind of that early powerhouse game team, very similar to that style that the Jade Dragon show, which is now where Scream has gone himself over to. But at least for now, we are starting to see some attempts there from the Solar Scarabs to get back to that stride.
Yeah, and they're looking the part, right? Whenever I see the Summers Masters fit from the Solar Scarabs, they're feeling good. You know, they're ready to play out their little hearts, and that's what I'm looking for. But, you know, it is going to be difficult, as you mentioned. You know, Sam for Soccer still has been trying to figure out where he slots in for this squad. It's one of those early aggressive types of style of play that I think the Solar Scarabs were sticking to, and that was because of off the back of Scream. So now that Sam's here, they still are trying to find their identity, where they're going to be able to get some wins and where they're going to be able to traverse the map. Up against the not against the Scarabs, up against Mambo rather. This is a team that likes to, you know, just hold on the brakes, not get active until very late in the game. I don't think that's the kind of style that the Scarabs are looking to play. So one of these is going to win out, right? Either the waiting until late game or getting active in the early. And we're going to have to see whose style really triumphs here.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly. At least for Hex Mambo, this is my solo laner's not level 20. He doesn't have his, you know, starter item online yet. We're probably not going to fight you anytime soon. I mean, that was the name of the game for Hex Mambo back at the last Masters, was when Hades and Baron were kind of running the solo lane. This was, okay, is my Bumbus Hammer online? No. Okay, I'm not rotating out then. We were watching 40, 45, 50-minute games for Hex Mambo. And for a team like that, it works perfectly. For the Solar Scarabs, they've never really been one to try and drag you through the mud for 40 minutes of play before they beat you in a late-game team fight. The Solar Scarabs are a 25 to 30-minute game and done. And it's very rare that we see the Solar Scarabs go beyond that time frame. When they do, they have had some success out there. Usually, if Inbowned is picking up these very CC-heavy style of Guardians, I think back to like the Sylvanas whenever he was playing that one quite often. So for Solar Scarabs, I got to imagine, and I kind of echo the sentiments with you, I think that they've got to run this down early to try and beat Hex Mambo at their own game.
Yeah, that's definitely the play style because, you know, Hex Mambo's so used to playing that style, right? And the Solar Scarabs, it's so much easier to just stick with what you've been doing, but you got to go with what's been working, and so far the Scarabs haven't been able to find how this roster starts to work, and trying to beat Hex Mambo at their own game with a new roster like that, I know we've sort of been harping on that point, but that's going to be difficult, so I agree 100%. They have to play their own game and try to get active early. Sam has never been a stranger to finding early aggression, right? He will be able to find those level 5 ganks, you know, look towards solo lane. Deathwalker's been talking that smack. Maybe go right over to them and say, hey, I'll see you at level 5. We'll see if you're able to back that up.
And again, just as a reminder to those who are tuning in, Hex Mambo, without their jungler here at the very least, Johnny is playing from home at the moment, and then they have Rottwen subbing in for Trickstank in this land, which means that Deathwalker put at a 95% chance that they win instead of 100 if they had Trickstank. We'll see if that 95% can net Hex Mambo a win in game number 1 as we jump into the picks and bans. And I'm curious where a lot of the ban allocation will go between these two teams out here. Because with Hex Mambo, it's kind of hard to ban out the solo lane. It's really hard to ban out Dzoni. It's kind of hard to ban out Zyrhoes. So where do you go? In my opinion, a lot of teams have found success when they try and target out, at least for specifically this player, the jungler, or not the jungler, the support and Rottwen.
Yeah, certainly could be the option. It looks like the Scarabs are going to take away that Cabrakan, which notably has been flexed over to solo. We've even seen some jungle play. You know what? We've seen it in mid. So this Cabrakan, I think, just a strong ban in general. And taking away that Khepri. So it looks like the Solar Scarabs are doing just that, right? Trying to focus out Rottwen, making sure that that duo lane specifically is not having this bastion of safety with Khepri. And maybe they just don't want to give up their mascot, which I would make sense, right? You don't want to give the Scarab over to Mambo.
True.
So if that's the case, the Scarabs have to, I mean, they have to try to grab Baron, right? That's got to be the play.
Yeah, but are you really grabbing Baron in a meta like this?
Oh,
Which,
they
I mean,
should.
how often have we, I don't think we've seen a single Baron, at least at this event just recently.
No, not yet.
Throughout the majority of this phase, Baron has been largely absent, especially like when the double Hunter really started coming online, the double and triple Hunter, we started seeing a lot less of the Baron. But as the bans do roll through, AMC Lancelot Nemesis from Hex Mambo, Discordia, Khepri, and Cabrakan banned away by the Solar Scarab. So if we want to talk about supports open right away, if you want to get something early for Rottwen, I know that Horus, Ganesh are two kind of like those pocket picks that he goes to. Sometimes we see the Kumbhakarn come out of Hex Mambo. But if we want to talk absolute top picks, Yemoja's still open to see if maybe these teams go for it.
Yemoja is open. Notably, the Baba Yaga is something that I think of as of Zyrhoes recently, just sitting back farming. Even, you know, you're not going to first pick the new Wa, but he does like playing that style of play as well.
Imagine if they did, though.
They certainly could, and that'd be a power move, right? Because number one, it's not going to reveal too much about your draft because, you know, Zyrhoes just loves farming, throwing the fog at the wave, then sprinting to back camps, getting ahead, and then you look up, and it's level 20. However, they will pick their mid laner, but it's going to be none of those things. Huang, who has been, you know, a very strong pick in the SPL, not the greatest win rate, but I never think it's a fault of the pick in itself because there's always so much burst damage. Its early game is pretty strong. Huang can, you know, really translate into the late game as well, and it just brings a ton of safety into that mid lane. So I think a smart option here, and again, doesn't reveal too much about the draft. You really can go anywhere with a pick like that. You could, you know, pivot into just having a really hard late game, or you can still get active early. Doesn't really say.
Really feels like Huang is kind of a de-incentivizing style of pick. Like, sure, it doesn't reveal anything. It just shows that you have a mage in the mid lane with Huang, or I guess technically in the dual lane if you really want to throw it there. I don't think any of the EU SEC teams were throwing mages in the duo like that. But also kind of makes it to where like you don't want to pick certain things like dodgy, not really fun into Huang because he, with beads, has 3 ways to get away from Powerhouse and never a great target. But we want to deter the Solar Scarabs from picking up some fairly heavy CC. God, Xing and Eset immediately out the gate. Some flexibility between both of those picks too. So let's just see where the rest of the Solar Scarabs draft goes before we can officially lock those ones down. So with Hex Mambo looking more towards the late game, what are some other picks maybe, Trelly, that you would like to see these guys go for?
I mean, I imagine the Heimdallr is just a second away from being snap locked, and there it is.
You're
maybe,
good.
Maybe 2 seconds. My bad on that one. I was a little slow. The Fafnir, however, that is something that has been extremely highly contested in the EU SEC, but I didn't think needed to be grabbed this early on. It's just not a pick that, you know, gets banned away anymore. But the Heimdallr in particular is just the #1 ADC that gets through in the EU circuit, period. It's either first banned or first picked. Heimdallr, safety is just king. Like, you want this pick because your ADC cannot be ganked unless you're covering the option of the Bifrost every single time. With some crazy amounts of CC, you can just make sure to completely remove someone from a fight if you're keeping track of those beads timers. You know, Mambo just value that pick, and pretty much everyone else in the EU SEC does. But you know what? NA loves. That's that Cupid, and that pick will certainly be just snap locked as well. You're going to be winning lane with Cupid up into a Heimdallr, at least you should be, but you know, you're a little bit less safe, right? You only have that dash and some hearts to try and live through these ganks. Notably, the junglers, I'm assuming, have not been picked just yet, so you don't really know what you're picking into. You have some options to ban away, but actually, Mambo are going to take away the Chernobog just in case. You know, given these picks, you know, Xing could be support, could be solo. Given how good Scary D's looked on these warriors, and actually, even though the Scarabs have been losing a fair bit in these matchups as of recent, Scary D has always looked explosive on these, like the Kakola and the King Arthur, things like that. I'm expecting to see the Xing in solo and support rather. So I'm thinking Eset mid, Xing in the solo lane or in the support role, and then still holding on to Scary D's pick. We could see something different, but just given how good Scary D's looked on these warriors, that's what I'm thinking.
Gotta wonder where Sam for Soccer might be going now, as we see Osiris and Daji as far as jungle bans are concerned by these two teams, and then Bellona and Chernobog to round out the top 4 of the bans. And King Arthur going to be picked up for the solo lane of the Solar Scarabs. So you were mentioning getting something aggressive, something high pressure in the solo lane for Scary D, something he can play bully on against Deathwalker, a perfect pick to be able to do so. And now I'm curious where Deathwalker will go for his solo pick. Mulan is something that he's picked.
Yeah,
we were both on that set. We had that one brain cell where we're like, all right, cool. Mulan to try and fight King Arthur. And Mulan feels like it could be at least maybe a decent matchup into this pick.
Yeah, I don't think that Mulan has any bad matchups. It's just when she's on point, she's still not that great. The only player that's really incentivizing playing this Mulan is Deathwalker. I have not seen anyone else as of recent. You know, she's really fallen out of favor, but Deathwalker still has played her.
Like
Even
that
in the
shirt.
last time Mambo was in Masters, like the last Masters tournament, when it was elimination time, Deathwalker went to the Mulan. So we'll see if that's the option coming out of the gates here. I think this is more of a pocket pick he wants to keep in the back pocket. You're not winning lane against King Arthur, but you're certainly not getting dominated unless some ganks are coming through. You can usually trade pretty evenly there. And it actually looks like a possible... Okay. You know, both these could go either way.
Not Chungle. Chungle with Ares running solo. Ares Walker is back.
I was going to say that is probably the call, but they could have flip-flopped. Definitely Ares solo is going to be a little bit better, and it will be the possible Chungle here. We'll discuss the Ares because that's what I'm looking at. Okay, we'll be locked in. We're going to get to the both. So, extremely tanky draft. 3 tried-and-true tanks here for Mambo. If you are going to be building Chaac hybrid, he's still going to be extremely tanky, has that sustain, and just... You got go buttons here, right? Like you got the Ares ult into the Chaac ult. Like you're just comboing those as much as you can, trying to get those beads, dueling dragons from the back. A lot of team fight presence here from Mambo, and that's exactly what I would expect coming into a tournament like this. They're not looking for early aggression. They're looking to fight you at 20+ minutes at these objectives. Now the Solar Scarabs have their option. Are they going to grab something for Sam for Soccer to get active in the early? I think, given this draft that Mambo has just shown us, that's exactly what they need here.
Completely off topic. I really do like the shirt that Slangy is wearing. That's split down with the black and white pineapple and then the black and gold on the other side.
Looks cool.
Really nice. The whole Solar Scarabs team kind of dressed for the occasion, or at least a few of the players on there I saw inbound as well.
Bobby's giving me safari vibes, though.
I know. Yeah, I do feel like we're ready to go on a safari with Bobby, but I think it's mostly just the hat. I think, he took the hat off.
Yeah, so now he looks like he's beach ready.
Yeah, now he's
wow,
just
I didn't realize the other side, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a cool. Oh, and you flip it around, it's opposite on the back.
That's so cool.
Or wait, is it only? Oh no, it's 3/4 black and gold, 1/4 black and white. That's honestly that might be cooler.
Yeah,
it might be cooler.
Either way, it looks fresh. But
back to the game though.
Yeah, while we were talking, that Ravana did get locked in. And this is sort of that early aggression that I was looking for. It's not like Ravana gets worse as the game goes on, but has a fair bit of CC in the early. At level 3, you have some kill potential onto the Huang. You know, of course he has Celestial Flight, which usually means no kill potential, but if you can bait that out somehow, chase it down with a blink, there are some options. It's not going to be an easy time to find pressure anywhere except for solo lane. That's where I think Sam for Soccer should be looking, because you look at duo, you see a Heimdallr, and you go, oh man, I can't chase Bifrost. You look at mid, you see a Huang, you're like, all right, that's Celestial Flight, that's no fun. However, you're looking at an Ares and a Chaac, you're like, we could probably win that fight in the early. Juke out some chains, you'll be sitting fine.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup in the Soul in there with the Ares versus King Arthur. I mean, we go back to kind of the olden days of King Arthur when he was really running rampant in the Soul lane back in the Glad Shield days. The question was always, okay, well, what can we do to stop King Arthur? Who's got good tools to deal with King Arthur? Typically, it was Ardio, mostly just because a stun and a cripple shut down half the kit. Do you feel that's kind of the same reason why Ares is maybe being picked here, to slow down some of the mobility of this god?
Yeah, I think that Ares just has a fantastic matchup into the entirety of this draft, except for Xing Chen, right? If you're ever going in and grabbing that ult, and then World of Rage of Steel comes after, you're like, oh man, I messed up. Like, you always want to use that as a counter ult. However, Eset, no real form of CC immunity. Cupid, King Arthur needs that charged ultimate. Of course, Robin's not going to care, but besides that, those 3 are going to have to keep track of their beats timers really well to make sure that they're living through these team fights. I'm just worried about the laning phase. That's where you have to make sure you're surviving as a series. A lot of HP 5. You know, if you can build into like a sovereignty with bolster defenses, you should be clearing the wave just fine. You just got to make sure you're warding up, because Ares not too mobile. The ganks are going to be relatively easy in the early.
And one of the big storylines that we were kind of hitting on for both these two teams is Hex Mambo does want to get to this late game, have that team fight ready to go between this Ares, the Fafnir. We know what Huang can do once he gets a few items online, gets that level 20 point, whereas the Solar Scarabs, definitely a little bit scrappier when it comes to their early game. That's where they have tended to shine in the past, and even with Sam joining the roster, that's still where they're trying to allocate a lot of their pressure in that early game. And they're going to want to get through that early game as quick as possible and put Hex Mambo behind. That way the Scarabs can stand a chance. Can the Scarabs find the early game win? Can Hex Mambo drag it to a late game and find a win? Let's jump into game number 1 with Dimes and Gore.
Hey, thank you, J-Mac. A relaxed Solar Scarab squad with a draft of their dreams, taking on a confident Hex Mambo with a call it a unique composition out
It's a
of
very
Europe so
Hex
far.
Mambo composition.
Very much so. Both of these squads, the undefeated Hex Mambo, the Solar Scarabs, looking for a footing here. I expect some fireworks on the way.
Yeah, look, and I'm really excited to watch this one. I've been excited for it since the bracket was announced, just being able to see what this team has to offer. I think that the let's say downside, I guess, for Hex Mambo is coming in, you have a sub, right? Instead of Trix being there and having a fourth SBL or ex-SBL player, you've got Rottwen, who has been a phenomenal support on LAN for teams in the past. So honestly, again, maybe it's a small trade. Maybe it's definitely going to take some getting used to for the team, but they seem confident in it, so I have confidence in them. I think Rottwen has impressed me a lot in the past. The other thing I've got to touch on, and you'd think I'd dive into Deathwalker and Ares, because that's such an easy and free talking point for what it's done in the past. It's actually Echrome I want to look at, because if you haven't watched the SCC, you would know. If you have watched it, you would know this. If you haven't, this is good info for you. Heimdallr is like first pick. Material for a lot of them. Yeah, there's a lot of players over there that love this pick, and there's a good reason for it. A lot of them are just insanely good at Heimdallr, and I would argue that I think Echrome might be the best, if not one of the top 2 in Europe for this Heimdallr pick. And it's one that, very often has been the end of the game, is that getting locked in. If Hex Mambo get this pick, you know that Echrome's going to have a good performance. So I'm really excited for this duo lane and what Echrome's going to be able to do on this pick.
A lot of plays from the Hex Mambo center around Echrome, and what was Trix Tank, right? Trix Tank,
yeah.
I think, unarguably one of the best supports of all time in our game. Trix Tank continually a repeat champion, so strong mechanically. Rottwen stepping
Just
up now.
Just a nice dude, too.
Great guy. Now Rottwen stepping in to take the place of Trix Tank. Are you kind of concerned about maybe some synergy issues with Rottwen or Echrome, or do you think they'll step right back into place?
I think they'll be fine, right? And again, this is something that is going to be lucky, and I mentioned this specifically actually with Sam and with Scream for the Dragons.
Yep.
Where it's like, you've played with these guys in ranked, right? And it's not going to be the same. It's not like comms-wise, competitive-wise, the same environment at the least. But you know a little bit of how they've played. And for Mambo, at least they've played against Rottwen in the past.
Zyrhoes a little bit under pressure here in the middle lane. Sam for Soccer takes a huge chunk of damage out of Dzoni on this Chaac jungle. Don't tell me this is coming back. Don't tell me this is a thing.
I don't have to tell you. It is, obviously. It's here.
But repeatedly, yes, okay, I know you didn't want to start on it. We're going to talk about Deathwalker on this Ares. Actually, a bit of an older school pick, right? We used to see this back in the day, but let's talk about this Chaac jungle for just a second here as these mid lane camps on the right side are being aggressed upon. Sam for Soccer falling low on this Ravana. Zyrhoes dashing in with that Celestial Flight. Not enough follow-up out of the Mambo to take down the jungler for the first blood. So Dzoni, Chaac, jungle. I always worry about gank ability on this Chaac only really having CC, hard CC on that silence, right? Just a slow otherwise. Talk me through the thought process of this pick.
Well, so he has a little bit going on for him, right? A little bit of mobility. Like you said, he's got good CC, good teamfight capability, but honestly, surprising damage. I think at the beginning of the game, he's going to be tanky. Mifflin had mentioned it earlier, but late game, you're going to be able to take a lot of damage and dish out a decent chunk while you're in the middle of these fights, while you're healing, so you've got a good amount of survivability. His gank potential is maybe a little weaker than some assassins that are going to close that gap a little faster. He doesn't have blink either, so it's not like he's just going to show up in the lane. But I think in combo with a lot of what they have, it's just going to allow them to bully people down, right? I'm going to just stick to you. If you're Eset, you're going to have trouble getting away. If you're Cupid and your dash is down, you're going to have trouble getting away. And so it's going to force a lot of mobility out of the Scarabs. And Dzoni's just really good in the jungle. And so I trust him to be able to step forward and get that damage out there where necessary.
Taking a look at the Solar Scarabs, we've touched on Hex Mambo for quite a few minutes here. I called it the dream of destiny, but it's got to be dang near close here when we're talking about the current meta of today's game state. Eset, we've seen in the support role, but always great in the mid as well. Cupid is the ADC of the hour recently, right? Xing has risen up in the ranks recently. Don't even have to say anything about King Arthur, as this left side sees some more pressure from Hex Mambo. Where do you go wrong here from the Solar Scarabs? If you're Hex Mambo, who are you targeting? Who are you putting behind to get yourself in this mid game?
I think it depends on where the fight's going to be going, right? Because I think that there's going to be an easy chance to try and maybe pick on Oboronic a little bit, just because Eset a little more difficult to get away. Wind Gust only gets you so far and only so fast. You can't really just disappear. Although the silence has been really good, and specifically from mid, a Spirit Ball plus Circle of Protection, the damage output of an Eset is insane. And while Ravana is relatively safe, I also think that he's been decently susceptible as well to kind of falling to his own hubris. Think you can get away, but sometimes you'll get caught out. And so those feel like they could be pressure points for the Mambo, but a lot of it is going to be wait for Ares to come through, see what CC you can get on your team. If you can burn beads before Ares is there, that's a huge thumbs up. And then just wait out some dashes, wait out some mobility. One big ult from Deathwalker, or even just some good chains from Deathwalker, should be able to give them a kill on a lot of people. It just depends on how easily locked down they are, right? Like Ravana, probably your worst case scenario in that event, because he'll just plop the 2, run away. But if you grab someone like Stuart, if you can get Oboronic, hell, even Inbowned, I think if you can catch him out of position, you chains him up, throw out the flames with one person behind you, it should be a pretty easy kill.
A lot of respect here from the Solar Scarabs to Hex Mambo, the European powerhouse. Of course, 5-0 undefeated. You have to put out some respect there. But usually at this point of the game, even 5 minutes in, as the next round of buffs respawn here, we've seen SPL caliber teams so far this week invade on respawn or try to push, take a Scorpion, take a red buff, take a purple buff. You saw on the left lane there that Inbound and Stuart tried to make their way into the enemy jungle. Couldn't make it happen here as the Solar Scarabs are on the Scorpion. That's a lot of S's there in a row. Gore do take it away from Hex Mambo. So finally the invades are coming out. Yeah. You just got to start building that gold lead slowly by taking those minor objectives. All players level 5 or greater though, so bit of action about to pop off sooner rather than later.
It's actually interesting because 5.5 minutes in, especially with no first blood and not like a lot of routine invades like you said on most of the buff camps, you get to look at a small gold lead that has been picked up specifically through like Coup and that Scorpion. And
purely
like,
macro.
Yeah, I was going to say, not a ton that's going to, it's not like you're spending all your gold, it's lucrative for you, but it's still nice, I think, early on to be able to pick that up. And it kind of shows where a lot of this pressure is. Like, is Ares going to have this insane lane against King Arthur? No, he's an Ares. Like, he can chain him and maybe make him second guess some things. Look how long it takes him to get a coup. Like, King Arthur would have done this 3 times over at this point. And so it's that conversation of like lane phase, that's not really where he's popping off. He's just maintaining and surviving. And I think that's a lot of what the Mambo won here. Level 7 for a Huang, you're not really looking for the fight right now. You want to play it patient. And I think that's something that I will give credit. We talk about it a lot in the SCC. Like, North America likes to get scrappy really fast. And we have some teams, the Dragons come to mind, that like to play that way as well. But other teams in the SPL, Kings come to my mind, still play, and it makes sense when you think of the players, a very European style, a little more slower, a little more methodical,
sure, yep.
Not stepping out of position for a fight or invading just for the sake of it, trying to play the map to the best of their ability. And I think with the tenure that's on Hex Mambo, I expect similar shot calls from them.
The Solar Scarabs, new jungler,
yeah,
trying to find their place in the SPL. We've seen the set they took recently as Zyrhoes is aggressive pawn here in the middle lane, has to use that Celestial Flight to get out of dodge there. The set they took as most recent was over the Camelot Kings.
Yes.
So the talent's there. The skill is there from the Solar Scarabs. We know what they can bring. And it's not like these have been 2-0 stomps in the SPL, right? They've been fighting their way back. It's been close, tough-fought games. New jungler here. How important do you think this set against Hex Mambo is to set the tone for the rest of the SMITE Masters week?
This one might be one of the most important. I said this the week that they made that change, but I think worth reiterating. I don't expect a win, like a first-place Masters for the Scarabs this month, this year, right now. I think that I'm looking at a Phase 3 team. I'm looking at a team that later on in the year, around Worlds, which is admittedly where they say they like to pop off anyway, that's where I really expect them to come together. But for a lot of what's going on here, I expect them to continue on this route of looking for improvement. But this match, I think it would be very important for them and morale to make sure that they can keep it up.
Beads burn there off of Echrome from Stuart. You see a lot of Cupids using that ultimate, not just for beads burning potential, right? Because you're not necessarily looking for that gank on your own. You're not looking for that 1v1 as Dzoni rotates over to this right-hand lane. Scary D down to half HP on this King Arthur. May be susceptible to a gank here from the King Arthur. Axe thrown down on the ground. No ultimate yet from Dzoni. Now it slams down. Scary D is able to twirl their way away. Sanford Soccer here for a little bit of backup. Still null on the board. It's a whole bunch of goose eggs for both of these squads.
I like the investment, and I think I like the idea. It's just a little bit lacking in damage, right? And that's, unfortunately, you're going to have that. If you're Chaac, you have one of 2 options. You have the Jotuns, so it feels like you maybe could have done it, but Deathwalker has just a breastplate. So you're going to get some damage out there if he's there, if those chains connect. I think Scary D just got some good distance between them. Sam does a good job of peeling. And unfortunately, the game kind of falls flat. But I like where their mind is at. I think the Mambo know where they need to put pressure. I think that this King Arthur is going to be kind of the herald for the Scarabs, the one leading the way to make sure that they can find their way in. And that'll open the door for Oboronic and Stuart to make some of the plays, like you said, we've gotten used to seeing them do. Because, actually harkening back to what you were talking about, their win against the Kings, Game 2, when they played that, I remember saying it on the desk. That was a Scream win. Like Scream
Sure.
won that game for them.
Sure.
Game 3 felt like the full team, right? We got to see the potential outside of just the jungle. And I think that's something that I really want to see from them this week, next week, and at the beginning of Phase 3. I want to know what are the Scarabs? For the longest time, for like a year now, it's been 80% Scream and then 20% the other guys. So I'm excited to see what they can do without having someone, admittedly, like because he was making a lot of sick plays, but I want to see if they're not overshadowed what this team's capable of.
And you can't put it in a vacuum, right? Individually, all of these players are incredibly talented. I mean, the SPL is still the best of the best of the best. You know, they earned their way into this league and they're here for a reason, so you have to put some respect on the name of the Solar Scarabs, despite their standings, as Stuart and Echrome are going at it here. We know Stu loves to fight in this lane. We know Stu has the macho, right? The attitude to take fights in that lane. Zyrhoes just avoids that Spirit Ball there. Rather, 10 minutes, though. This is a little bit slower than I think we're used to seeing from the Scarabs. And Sanford Soccer not really facilitating anything along the map so far, allowing the farm to come through for the rest of their team. What's going to kick off this game? Is it going to be a major objective to kick things off? Is it going to be a Pyromancer steal, a Gold Fury, or just a good old-fashioned pick in the jungle?
At this rate, it starts to feel either... Honestly, I kind of want to see a Gold Fury first. I think just because the Scarabs, with Circle of Protection, you can force that fight to happen, right? Pyromancer is going to be easy for you. But I think a Gold Fury will be like the big fight for it objective from the Mambo. I don't think you want to jump in here, and I don't think you want to try and fight into 4 Scarabs. I think that you just kind of look at it, take your losses, and see what you can do elsewhere.
Here we go. Pyromancer started up. Pyromancer put in the ground by the Solar Scarabs. Ronnie, I should say Johnny and Rottwen, Ronnie's their couple name, combining there for the pressure to push back the Solar Scarabs, but the Pyromancer does go down to the Chaos Squad, so the first objective of the match taken by the SPL squadron.
I'll admit, I'm kind of impressed to see the Mambo want to fight. I think putting pressure on it, forcing the Circle of Protection is big.
Sure.
You don't necessarily lose out on anything big. Johnny's beads being down is going to be a big deal for the next couple of minutes, but I'm surprised to see him stick around as long, because it doesn't feel like anything you do is going to out-secure the Circle of Protection. I mean, maybe with a well-timed ult from Johnny and a mistimed ult from oBoronic, you could get something. But I think getting that, feels like a small win, because now if you wanted to, left-hand side pressure can start up, and you can feel pretty confident. As long as oBoronic doesn't have that ult, Gold Furies, any objectives like that are going to be a little easier for you to maybe swing at. So trying to pull that out early would be a huge fight. But it felt like they wanted more, but didn't quite have the damage necessary. And some of that, like you look at the Huang build, just shy of where he needs for the damage.
Ooh, a big Bifrost away is able to allow Echrome to escape from that Fields of Love, and I think it's really going to rest on this Transcendence getting stacked up by the Chaac. That was the huge key component missing, slamming down that massive AoE ultimate. It just didn't do enough damage, like you said. The silence was there. Deathwalker is going to yank in Scary D. Actually, not going to yank in Scary D. Beats still up for the solo laner from the Solar Scarabs there, but it's really going to rest on this Transcendence being stacked up, as Gold Fury is the next objective on the minds of the Scarabs. Circle Protection down as well. The Gold Fury is going to be secured by the Solar Scarabs. Almost no shot for Hex Mambo to get in there.
Yeah, that's one of those no-brainers, right? You've got Circle Protection. What are they going to do? They walk up to you. I mean, the solo laners aren't going to be around. And you know that you just pressured out Echrome. Echrome had to use ult and beads just to get away from the left-hand side. So I like the Scarabs reading the map and getting aggressive with it. You don't need kills to open that up when you've got a comp like they do, which is just centered. Whenever an Eset, especially out of mid, exists, it's going to be objective-based play. And you're going to be better than the other team unless they have something like a Spirit of the Nine Winds or anything around there. So it makes it a lot easier for them, for that Pyromancer call. Hey, oBoronic, you got ult? Yes. Cool. Let's come get the Pyro. Hey, oBoronic, got ult? Yeah. Let's go for the Gold Fury. It's really just a one-word conversation for them. They don't have to think too heavily on it. And it's going to be a problem, I think, for the Mambo to deal with as this game goes on, because Fire Giants are going to be in a similar vein. Maybe not as easy to fight and burn down for the Scarabs early on, but it is going to be just as easy to secure. Luckily, now Zyrhoes, finishes the Divine Ruin, hits level 12, which is usually the turning mark for a Huang. I expect mid to start kind of stepping up. Unfortunately, on the other side of the map, I would maybe be highlighting Echrome at this point, but Stuart's been doing a great job stripping him of his beads, making sure that ult stays under control. And so I don't think until team fights that we're going to see too much out of the Heimdallr here. There's a lot of potential for it.
I'm glad you... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if they can just keep it going and not die.
I'm glad you highlighted that Divine Ruin, though, because I was just looking at this Solar Scarabs team. You see the Eset sometimes taken into the support role, actually most of the time as of recent, just recently moving back into this middle lane in the past few months. The healing from the Eset, not nearly as a component, right, if you're not stacking up that magical power, but now in the mid-roll, the healing going to be more prevalent, combined with this Cupid, as the Greater Scorpion's being looked at here by the Solar Scarabs, taken down as well. Rottwen and Dzoni want some more out of this one. Sam for Soccer forced into that Mystic Rush just to escape. Chaac's coming in with a big 4-man silence. Dzoni tossed into the entirety of the Solar Scarabs, and now it is just chaos as Deathwalker has been thrown up in the air. Zyrhoes finds the first kill onto Sam for Soccer. And oBoronic in the middle of Hex Mambo. Now this Eset's not looking too healthy.
Yeah, that's just a clean kill for him. Look, chains down. Oh, that pull from Deathwalker, man. This just feels good. And they get everything. I mean, the exact order that you need. Dzoni is going in, and what is his goal? Is he going to kill anybody? Probably not. Is he going to burn some beads and make them feel awkward? Yes. But if he gets the silence down, which he does, feels like it's going to be a big team fight win. They get to go forward. They burn specifically Sam's 2 to make sure that he's not going to be fine. Beads are down at that point because they want to get away from the Scarabs. The rest of the team rushes in. Zyrhoes has some great damage. Deathwalker has a really good ult. And so it doesn't even matter how much of it's happening on the side. You get great burst out of Zyrhoes and then immediately that pull. It doesn't matter if the Scarabs split 2 ways. They saw the Eset, they go for the Eset. They also took the circle of protection down in that. So with Pyromancer coming back soon, I think this gives a little bit of leverage over to the Mambo if they want to try and flex on the map a little.
We saw how confident Hex Mambo is in that interview coming into this game, right? Feeling good, maybe a little bit of playful banter there wearing that Solar Scarabs jersey was Deathwalker.
That's my real team over there.
Yeah, you gotta feel good kicking things off with a 2-0. Yeah, you're down in gold 15 minutes in, but hey, you picked up first blood, you found second blood as well, opened up the map maybe a little bit. Where do you go from here?
Honestly, I think that you could try to flex, again, a little bit towards Pyro. At this point, feels like it's going to be the safety objective to test the waters. But what I think we really got out of that is the showcase. And it's perfect because you can see the dichotomy of it. Go back 6 minutes ago, Pyromancer from the Scarabs, when it comes to just burning an objective, they're going to do it better than you. They're going to kill it faster. They're going to be able to secure it better. That's going to work out no matter what. Go back a minute ago, team fights, that's a little different story for them. So I'm wondering if the Scarabs, if they can clean that up, then I think that the entirety of the game goes their way. But I think the Mambo have done a great job of getting a draft that allows them to play aggressively when they want to, allow them to be very disrupting on the Scarabs. And if you don't beads, you know, if Deathwalker goes in and forces your beads out of that, well, now you don't have it for a silence, or you don't have it for a stun, or a root, or something that happens elsewhere on the map. And so I think it's something that works really well in tandem with them, as long as they don't stack too much on each other. If they have just the right space, like we just saw in that fight, then they're going to be able to find plenty of pulls, plenty of plays, and plenty of kills that'll eventually get them ahead. And what is it, like 1,000 gold? It's not too bad right now, 17 minutes in. Essentially
parity across the board. Looking at the levels, barely a 2-level lead in the jungle for Hex Mambo. Otherwise, it's pretty much dead even down the board, right? 16s across the board for the ADCs. Same thing with the solo laners. Mid laners are neck and neck there. The Pyromancer has come back online. The Gold Fury's not that far to follow as it just spawns now. Circle of Protection's online, and that tells me that the Solar Scarabs are ready to take their next objective.
Yeah, I think that they can start looking at it. Again, Pyromancer, in cases like these, so much easier to go for it. Easier to kill, deals less damage to you, and you can pop it. But, and this is a huge, huge if for the Mambo, depending on how this goes out. If Pyromancer gets pulled, then you can wait. If you can get a Circle of Protection dropped over there, I think you try to force a fight around the Fury. Again, just because knowing it's down, knowing you have a big advantage, and I think because your team fight might just be a little bit stronger than what the Scarabs are prepared for, you can start to flex on that a little bit. Otherwise, I'm looking at the Scarabs getting a lot of gold for free. I'm looking at them getting a lot of potential map pressure for free. That otherwise is going to make the job a lot more difficult for the Mambo going into the late game.
And as we're approaching 20 minutes here, if oBoronic uses that Circle of Protection from the Eset to secure an objective, all of a sudden you're lacking a major teamfight ultimate, right? Providing healing, providing power on that pop. And that's a big deal when Hex Mambo has all of these circles they can press, right? Dzoni, Deathwalker, great teamfight ultimates. As this left lane could see some action, Sam for Soccer making their way into this left lane here. Still hovering, though. Losing out on a bit of farm. Not really, though. Only that green buff really here for the junglers taking. So Sam just really hovering, wants to start something up. Dzoni has made the rotation as well.
Yeah.
Well warded is this left lane.
I have to give a shout out to Dzoni because you know, you mentioned losing out on farm here, but more specifically, Johnny's still 2 levels up despite that, right? So it's been doing really well. I like his loop. He should have just spotted for sure that Sam for soccer was over here. So maybe that's going to be the call off for at least the 2 junglers. I was wondering when the other shoe was going to drop over there. It felt like it could have been any time. It might be in mid, though.
Dzoni, remember, is not building the most protection-heavy build here. It is quite squishy. Circle of protection down, circle of protection popped, and oBoronic finds the first kill for the Solar Scarabs on the jungle.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you're the Scarabs, you can just take... I mean, you use circle of protection, but you can take whatever fight you want. You've got a numbers advantage. It's going to make things difficult. Bobby takes way more than I expected in mid. He's going to be able to walk out fine, but I guess that goes to show. And, you know, Dzoni, like you said, maybe it's not the most tanky build. It might not be the cornerstone of their damage either, though. I think Zyrhoes and Deathwalker just showcase that a little bit. So something the Scarabs still have to be worried about throughout this game is that potential turnaround in those team fights, as well as a late compassion pickup here for Deathwalker. And again, this is something that I think is going to end up helping a little bit of everybody. I'm curious, once he joins the fight, and you know, you talk about Ares passive as well with auras and things like that doing more damage, I think the Deathwalker is going to be a huge power boost for the Mambo when he's in there.
The Oni Fury going down faster than I expected from the Solar Scarabs. That thing's getting chunked to no end. Only Rottwen and Echrome here as Zyrhoes is being zoned out in the backline by Scary D on this King Arthur. Down to half HP is the mid laner. Scary D rushing it down. Meanwhile, on the top side of the map, Echrome and Rottwen are being targeted out and killed by the Solar Scarabs. Stuart picking up one for themselves, making their Cupid 1-0-0 here. The rest of Hex Mambo forced fully out of this Gold Fury pit, and the Oni Fury is going to fall to the Solar Scarabs.
And I'm going to give credit where credit's due. The Scarabs play that smart, but I will say I don't know what the Mambo were trying to do. Dzoni and Deathwalker were on the other side of the map. Dzoni was at his speed buff, Deathwalker was at his blue buff. You've got all 5 Scarabs there, and the 3 of you are trying to step into a team with the circle of protection around a Gold Fury. I don't know where the accomplishment was. I think if it's just Rottwen, I'm like, okay, he's going to see. We've seen a lot of hammer steals. Maybe he's just going to go for it for the Fafnir. But that and Echrome playing that far up, plus Zyrhoes kind of being like right on the edge of do we want to fight, do we not want to fight? It just feels like there was a shot call that was being made and not everyone wanted to follow it, so it was like half committed. And it just falls flat. If you're going to make plays like that, the Scarabs are going to run away with this game pretty easily. I think that grouping up in this portion of the game, you know, you're 22 minutes in, this is where you need to start working as a 5-man unit. Teleport was down for Deathwalker. You knew he wasn't going to be there. In my mind, the minute I see Scary D, I go, cool, we're backing up, man. I don't want anything to do with this. Let's just regroup and wait for the Fire Giant. And I think, unfortunately, the Scarabs have just been reading them better.
5-man here from the Solar Scarabs, focusing down Deathwalker. Rottwen is in the party as well, but Deathwalker falling so quickly to the onslaught of the Solar Scarabs. Now Rottwen and Dzoni here to contest this Fire Giant. The Solar Scarabs are not done. Pushing forward, leading the charge is Scary D, forcing out that Celestial Flight from Huang. Rottwen up into that Dragon form, but a great Fields of Love from Stuart's going to lock in the Fafnir, a double for Sam.
Yeah, look, that's just easy, right? I mean, you pick off Deathwalker while he's alone. Then you pick off Rottwen while he's alone, and now you've got a 3v5 of people who haven't been building tanky. Yeah, you might be able to get some damage out there, but I don't think it's going to work out well for the Mambo.
Yeah, Scary D is forcing out Zyrhoes in the backline. Dzoni's here to contest this Fire Giant, but once again, this Chaac, this lone Chaac against the entirety of the Solar Scarabs. Scary D does their job in the backline, picking up the squishy mid laner. Dzoni able to escape danger. Echrome in not the greatest spot, but Bifrost directly into the clutches of Scary D, who's going to chase out this Heimdallr while the Solar Scarabs start up the FG.
Yeah, look, this is the Scarabs just buying their own success. Rottwen and Deathwalker literally still have not respawned, and they're about to kill off Echrome one more time. The Scary D, that's style points, by the way. Getting the beads there.
Beads, baby.
That's extra bonus points for getting that kill through that. I think just well played by them. In turning things around this way, it's not even like they weren't in control, right? They had the gold lead prior to that, but being able to find an individual pick 22 minutes in, like, if your team is not with you, and you know, whether it's ward control, I don't know what it is, but positioning there from the Mambo feels like the Scarabs were gifted the kill, and then immediately it's just the collapse in. Cool, we killed off 1, now it's a 4v5. We killed off 2, there's nothing at that point I think the Mambo are going to be able to do. I admire it, though, because it's the difference, right? Most SPL teams, you lose 2, they just back off. That Fire Giant goes down. Nobody else is going to fight. I like seeing some fight in them, although I think it ends up giving up way more than it's worthwhile, right? Not only do they get a lot more kills, any experience lead that they really had earlier for the Mambo is completely moot, as we see a bunch of level 20s or 2 levels up in support, things like that on the side of the Scarabs. And you give over the Fire Giant. So you get a lot of pressure now across the map, ignoring a Pyromancer, which they also got, ignoring a Fury, which they got not too long ago, and honestly on respawn will be within this Fire Giant power play, so they'll be able to get another. It just feels like it was the wrong fight at the wrong time, and unfortunately for them now, it's put them in a much more difficult position. In fact, you know what, tier 2s, like normally, sub 30 minutes, I'll say maybe you could make a defense here. And I think they could if they all group up under one, like in mid or in left. You absolutely have the capability to for the Mambo. But I haven't seen them group up. I mean, there's not been a 5-on-5 fight except for the one over in right, and that one they won handily. So if they can just work together, then I think we'll have a lot more of a defensive chance for them. Otherwise, you're backing up under the Phoenixes. And sub 30 minutes, I already give you a thumbs up for that. With your comp, I give you a second thumbs up. Should be able to hold off on the Scarabs there.
Solar Scarabs definitively opening up the map for themselves now as the Jutsu Tower's being aggressed upon by the SPL squad. Deathwalker takes a hard bomb straight to the face, has to pop a health pot there. And I think we have a small sample size for Masters so far, right? 1 complete day of play, 1 half day of play thus far. But if there's one thing I think we can certainly take away from these SPL versus SCC games, as this tier 2 tower in the mid is being targeted here. Dzoni dropped down to half HP with almost nothing utilized there by the Solar Scarabs. 3 members on this left-hand side, the duo lane plus their mid laner. If there's one thing we can take away so far, hold on, Echrome and Deathwalker both caught in the fields of love. Echrome forced to use that Heimdallr. Deathwalker, how many can they pull in? The answer is 2, but a shell pop and Sanford Soccer rotating in means that Deathwalker will fall. Rottwen is next on the table for the Solar Scarabs. Scratch that, it is Dzoni as the Chaac's being targeted out by this Chaos team here. Spirit Ball is going to put the jungler in the dirt, and this tier 2 tower falls as well.
I mean, if I'm going to give, I think, again, shout-outs to where it's appropriate. Fields of Love have been so on point this game to just make things awkward for anybody who's dealing with it. Really good circle protection there, good silences, good Spirit Balls. I mean, just the CC from the Scarabs has been exactly where they needed, exactly when they needed, and on the targets that they're going to be able to deal with. And once again, they find themselves, I think, in a very lucrative position where now you can flex a little on the left side of the map. You can easily take this tier 2 because even if they step up as 3, it's a 3v5. You could tank through this tower and be more than fine, especially with an Emperor's Armor on inbound. So I think that they're going to be able to play the rest, 30 seconds of this power play and aggressively as they want, get this Fury back, have an incredible power spike because of the gold that they should have in their pockets. That's going to make things, again, even more difficult when it comes down to setting up for the next firefight.
You know, looking at the Solar Scarabs almost 27 minutes into this game, I have to shout out the 2 frontliners. Scary D and Inbound, despite the low kill total, they've constantly, I mean, even minute 3-5, I noticed Inbound was working their way into the mid camps, the enemy side mid camps, just pushing, like, not using an ability, not looking for a Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, not trying to set anything up, just pressuring in. Same thing with Scary D in the last 2-3 team fights. We've seen them target Zyrhoes over and over deep, far away from their team, far away from any kind of support from their own squad, just playing that in-your-face frontliner style, and Inbound and Scary D have facilitated a lot of the setup and damage that the Solar Scarabs have been able to find.
And I think that not only that, they've been really good at zoning people and some of these objectives.
Pressure.
Specifically like Scary D, that last fight, I mean, granted, he was like a hair away from getting killed off by Echrome, but he didn't, right? He had his beads, he played it well, he played it calm.
Taking out Zyrhoes beforehand.
Yeah, kind of recognized where he needed to be, getting a couple of kills that I think were crucial for their victory there. And so now you're looking at him and, you know, I'm starting to wonder, like, you know what? We've seen a lot of Chaac jungle. I honestly am scratching my brain. I don't remember if we've seen one win at this point. I'm starting to wonder, as much as I like Echrome, and in fact, I think all of Europe, they all have phenomenal Heimdalls, but into this matchup where Cupid has been so strong, I'm starting to wonder if maybe there's a reason he hasn't been that high on the priority, since it seems like that has been a matchup that Stuart, while he didn't get a ton of solo kills, was absolutely controlling that lane, no problem against Echrome. That's just a couple of things. Maybe some of it drafts, some of it definitely play on field. I think it's been advantages for the Scarabs, and once again, around this FG, not a lot of wards on the map, and definitely not a lot of wards in inventory right now for the Mambo.
The Solar Scarabs taking it now from the Hex Mambo. Huang is always going to be a threat throughout the entirety of the game, and I can't forget that Zyrhoes is an SPL level talent, right? Zyrhoes has been around forever, knows how to play this game at the highest level. You put Zyrhoes with that kind of mechanical ability on a god like Huang, there's always a win condition there. I mean, there's always a way to come back. Fire minions are chunking away at this Titan, though. Echrome sent back to base to defend it, and the Solar Scarabs want this Fire Giant. They're pressuring forward, inbound, playing the frontliner here against 4 members of the Hex Mambo. Surging forward is bound. There's the Whirlwind. Deathwalker yanking in 2 members, the 2 frontliners of the Solar Scarabs. Sanford diving straight into the back line. Dzoni doing the exact same on the opposite side. 3 members now of Hex Mambo shoving out Sanford. Scary D trying to play pressure maker as well. oBoronic finds Dzoni in the back.
This has no. You need to hit those shots. Finally, someone's gonna get rid of Sam. But look, it's maybe cost too much. Deathwalker's so low.
Woo! Echrome falling low as well. Scary D's gonna pick up the ADC. Zyrhoes using that movement ability preemptively, so no escape here from the charging forward Solar Scarabs. Scary D on the attack hero, blink in, catches 2 in that spin. Zyrhoes is the target. Stuart over the wall, assisted by oBoronic with that Spirit Ball, takes out the mid laner for the Mambo.
Yeah, I think, again, just a good play. Dzoni almost separates it. They kill Sam.
That was close.
That feels like the start of something big, but the minute that I see Echrome go forward, some of those autos are just a little too wide. They're not hitting the target, and that's where things start to just, it skews downhill dramatically. You get a really, really good amount of control from once again, Scary D and Inbound kind of leading the way. And then when you've got Stuart dealing the damage he's doing, when Boronic's playing the way that he's playing, it becomes a lot easier for the Scarabs to clean up the rest of that fight when you're fighting a man down for the Mambo. Plus, Deathwalker had been taking low initially on that fight, so it didn't even feel like they could fully jump in the way that the Mambo needed to. And that has put them in an awkward position. They at least managed to save a little bit, right? No more fire minions that they're going to have to deal with massively after one more wave over there on left. And they've, I want to say, put themselves in a spot where at least everyone's going to be alive. You're missing a lot of relics, though, and that's going to be problematic. It's a problem. And so it makes it a little easier for the Scarabs to try and engage. If it's inbound, whether he just runs forward, Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, maybe it's just some CC strung out from somebody else, maybe it's a Fields of Love from Stuart. Either way, I think the Scarabs have a lot of pressure they can throw out there. Plus, this is an EFG. So all of those defenses that we just saw around like tier 2s, that's pretty much what it's going to feel like around here. With the Emperor's armor on inbound, the amount of tankiness that they have coming out of Scary D as well, they could afford to put pressure on 2 Phoenixes at once if they really wanted, and not have to worry too much about the clapback from Mambo. But you still got good damage from your mage. You've got, I think, a really hard-hitting ADC. As long as Echrome can get into a good spot and Zyrhoes doesn't get pressured out, I think there's still some turnaround potential for the Mambo, and at this point, much needed.
Well, if you're the Hex Mambo, plus side, your Phoenix is back, so at least that's going to help for, what, the 3 autos it takes from Stuart to take down that weakened bird, right? And just as you said, the Solar Scarabs have split this push, 3 on the left side, 2 in the middle lane. And like I said, this Phoenix is going to drop with almost no contest out of Hex Mambo. Does push out inbound, so forced out are the Solar Scarabs for just a moment here. Scary D and Sanford have kept up that assault in the middle lane. That is a full health Phoenix, though, so it's going to take the entirety of the health bar, all the damage the Solar Scarabs can muster in order to take down this mid lane bird. Stuart healing up the rest of their team here, and here's that healing that I was alluding to earlier in the game coming to play. Scary D blinking in, ultimate as well. Fields of Lover down right on top of the Ares. Rottwen takes a Spirit Ball to the face. Zyrhoes forced out of the fight early. Inbound has to hover around the edges, dropping to low HP. A massive silence out of Dzoni on this Chaac. Deathwalker caught by the Spirit Ball, able to escape with a sliver of HP, and it's a full reset from both squads as no one has fallen in this Phoenix offensive.
If Deathwalker's able to get in there, I think this fight changes, but they did so much damage. Now Rottwen is going to be in a little bit of trouble. When he de-transforms, that might be easy pickups. The Scarabs are backing off. Health bars may be a little too low. That healing, while it's there, it's maybe not enough for everybody, so they are going to have to back away. I think a good repel from the Mambo to keep things in their way. Just shy in my mind, though, of becoming a game turnaround play. And granted, is it going to win them the game if they wipe the Scarabs there? They could deicide them once, maybe you clear up some towers. There's not a very favorable map state on the other side for them to deal with, but I think that it would have been a good showcase of strength. Again, 5-on-5, what that team is able to do. Unfortunately, Deathwalker just ate a ton of damage at the beginning, not even through fault of his own. It was just good CC from the Scarabs. And so if they can find themselves a scenario where similar plays happen, but Deathwalker, somebody else is able to get in while the Scarabs are that low and capitalize on it. And we might be looking at an even longer game. And you know what? 33 in, I have to give the Mambo a lot of credit because it felt like they have not really had too much control for a majority of the game anyway, except for the 2-minute period they were up 2-0.
Sure.
But I think if you are willing to just dig your heels in and push this as long as you want, there's definitely going to be some late game turnaround potential.
I mean, they're so CC heavy, right? Ares, one of the most CC intense gods in the game, right? With cripples and plucks and all of that nonsense. Same thing with Dzoni, big AoE silence. Of course, you have the root from Zyrhoes. Echrome can send you across the realms. Rottwen's a support character, so loaded up there. Their defense is great. Their base defense is fantastic. But what do you do after the defense, I think, is the big thing. As you were alluding to, Tier 1 towers up, Tier 2 towers up as well for the Solar Scarabs. You got to make something happen after the deicide. But first, you have to make the deicide happen. The Hex Mambo looking to defend their base one more time. A big-time defense. As Inbound is chunked down early in this engagement to about 3/4 HP. That might play a factor a little bit later on in this fight. Solar Scarabs backing off. Once again, splitting the map here, sending their jungle and solo laner into this mid lane Phoenix, while the remainder of the squad stays on the right side, shoving forward a Scary D and Sam for Soccer. Being zoned out by Dzoni here. oBoronic picks up an early kill on the ADC for Hex Mambo, and that is so much damage gone on the offside of this fight.
And look, I mean, this is just so much pressure being exuded by the Scarabs. They've got a lot in mid.
Woo.
Zyrhoes is getting knocked down. Scary D's looking
smokes.
for more.
Scary D is pressuring forward like the frontliner. We know they are. Silence comes down onto Scary D. Mystic Rush returned onto the jungler. Stuart with a big auto attack takes out this Chaac. Rottwen in the dragon form is forced to leap away as the middle lane Phoenix is the next target for the Solar Scarabs. Dropping low once again, though. Shades to that first Phoenix defense that the Hex Mambo had, but this time they're missing Echrome and Dzoni, two big-time players on their squad. Dueling Dragons out, connecting onto Stuart, but not finishing off the ADC. Zyrhoes forced out. That's huge for the Solar Scarabs. Deathwalker is going to be pushed back as well. Couple more shots into the solo laner is going to finish that one off, but the Titan might fall first. These minions have been doing work on this Titan. A couple more shots, circle of protection, explosion, baby, and the Solar Scarabs pick it up.
And look, that's just, again, good play, good recognizing on the map, and good pressure, right? If Scary D doesn't go in there, get Zyrhoes out of there. There's a lot more return damage under that Phoenix. And unfortunately, you don't have your mid laner. Then anybody who gets aggressive is just going to get swarmed by Scarabs. And like you said, even though Fire Giant had fallen off, they had enough pressure in the kill on Dzoni, and then eventually the kill on Echrome, then the kill on Dzoni, to make it even easier to just start marching forward. And again, it comes down to little moments throughout that game. I don't think we ever got to see what I would call a true 5-on-5 fight for the Mambo there. I think that what we got to see was one, maybe in the jungle, and then a couple where there's some solid fights and definitely some clap back around the mid Phoenix. That one defense,
sure,
I think was really solid, but definitely a lot of moments that were falling just a little flat, whether it was separation, somebody getting pulled, some things that felt like counter picks in my mind. Like I think the Heimdallr just struggled into the Cupid, and we got to see Stuart have much bigger moments, much more impactful plays, where Heimdallr was spending most of his ults, most of his relics just trying to stay alive, even just during the farm phase.
Well, the Solar Scarabs find the first W over the Hex Mambo, but Mambo not giving up the ghost quite yet. Game 2 coming your way in a sec. Stick around.
was about what we were pitching up onto the desk, where Hex Mambo want to have this slower early game, Solar Scarabs want to try and force a few fights out, and then around the 14 and a half minute mark, we finally get that 4v4 style of fight over in the jungle. Hex Mambo are the ones who get the first couple of kills, but everything after that just comes up net positive for the Solar Scarabs. They're able to drag the lead away. And Trelly, it's the Solar Scarabs who come out on top in game number 1. It was a little bit cleaner of a second half of the game at least, but Trelly, that first half of the game definitely showed what the Hex Mambo is capable of.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the Solar Scarabs' objective play was just superior. You know, even though the few kills here and there, they were certainly ahead in the end. And you know, I think about 30 minutes plus. When I looked up and saw that it was 30 minutes plus, I was like, this is Mambo territory. You know, this is where they love to play. And unfortunately, at that point, the gold lead was just not even close. There was just no way they could fight back into that. They tried their best, but you know, Stuart on the Cupid. This pick is top tier for a reason. This is like one of, if not the just best team fight ADC that we have in the meta currently. There's a lot of damage being spread throughout, and you know, the Fields of Love. It's a very annoying ability to try and deal with. If you're the latter half of the Hex Mambo draft, the front line, you know, Chaac after the ultimate, Dzoni didn't like it. Deathwalker on this Ares, he didn't like being in that. And not to take away from everyone else, of course, the whole entirety of the Solar Scarabs was playing well, but it just seemed like Stuart was doing so much. And of course, Oboronic on the Eset was confirming those objectives. You're talking about the objective play. Having that Eset, it just seemed like Mambo would show up to these objectives and go, all right, we're gonna fight here, and they'd see circle protection and be like, nah, we'll get them next time. You know, they just really could not play into that circle of protection as you would expect. That's what the Eset brings, and that's why I think it was so highly picked.
I mean, you could even see in those last couple of clips, we were sitting 22, 23 minutes in, 2 to 3 on the slash line, 2,500 gold, kind of separating those two teams at that point. It was up for the Solar Scarabs by then. But once this team fight came through, we started to see some of the struggles that Ares in general kind of has, where you have to be in the front line for such a long time, channeling that ultimate to try and pull somebody in. Rottwen, every time he would de-transform, there's a Cupid waiting at your foot with the Fields of Love ready to go, or even a Circle of Protection, as you mentioned, from oBoronic. It just felt like there was so much channeled energy from the front line, at least of the Hex Mambo, that once you got to the late game and your carries are all full build, your mages are full build for the Solar Scarabs, that he just really couldn't do much beyond there. So Solar Scarabs able to take game number 1 over Hex Mambo. And I don't even really want to say it's back to the drawing board for Hex Mambo, because they started out very well. They started out even or ahead of the Solar Scarabs. It just came down to that little bit of late game. So Trelly, then, is there maybe like a pick or two from the Hex Mambo draft that you would kind of change out, at least for Hex Mambo, to maybe give themselves a better chance to switch up into picks and bans for game 2?
The Chungle.
The Chungle?
I'd switch it out. I'd remove it.
Okay.
I would just X-nay that one. I get it. Johnny's on ping. Big circles are easy. Just play something different, you know? Play something different, I think. Because the thing is, Johnny was getting these massive storm calls, getting to the backline, hitting 3-4 man ults, and then it was like, okay, now what? Like, you know, like it's just Chaac is so much better when he's tanky, because he can just keep being that annoying presence. Full damage. There's a time and place, but this wasn't the time or the place. So I think, you know, back to the drawing board is a decent phrase to be used, but Hex Mambo has made the one adaptation that I expected them to, and that is removing the Eset from play. This now opens up their objective, their 5v5, so much better. If they ever showed up 2 Gold Fury late, or Pyromancer late, or more specifically Fire Giant in the late, they weren't able to fight into it, because you can't outburst it. There's just, unless you're killing Oboronic before it goes off, there's just no way to outplay that ability. So taking that away, I think a pretty smart bet. But the Solar Scarabs, they got first shot here, and you know, even into a quote bad matchup like the Ares, Stuart had no problems on that Cupid, and it looks like the Chernobog is actually going to be more contested than the Cupid, so that's going to be locked in right away.
Yep, so Chernobog, for now, for the Solar Scarabs, could see potentially a Cupid pick as well go their way. But to round up at least the bans that have come through.
I can't believe
Cabracken.
the Stupid.
The Stupid.
The Stu Cupid. I never got to say it. I'm so upset. It just came to me. Next time.
Big Stu popped off too much.
Yeah, next time we get the chance, I'm going to say he's going stupid on the Cupid. That's what I'm going to say.
It has happened. I know it's popped up at least before, maybe on Twitter at some point. I did see it. But Cabracken, Discordia, Kepri, Eset, Lancelot, Nemesis, the bans. And then the Chernobog, as we already highlighted, picked up by Solar Scarabs. And Bellona, a signature pick of Deathwalker, one that he single-handedly brought back to the forefront of the meta seasons back
Huang.
when he was in the SMITE Pro League. And that's something that did still work out well, fairly well for Zyrhoes, that Huang that was a first pick for Hex Mambo last time. will be their second pick in game number 2. Now it goes back over to the Solar Scarabs with the Stupid still up, if that's where they elect to go, and maybe throw the Chernobog in mid for oBoronic. But still plenty of options available to him. You imagine this is a good point for them to maybe pick up a god for Inbound. I mean, Xing Chen's still available, and that's something that he worked out real well last game.
Yeah, I see no reason why Xing Chen would ever be a bad selection here. It's just one of those extremely safe Guardians, and the Khepri's already taken away. Unless the Solar Scarabs are really looking towards something like that Yemoja, I think Xing Chen would be a fantastic grab in the situation. Of course, Huang's going to have a ton of safety, and Bellona is just one of those picks that, I can't take Sam seriously. I'm sorry. Whenever I see
He's toed out.
Yeah, whenever I see him toed out, man, I can't think about the picks of bands.
It's not only Gormaz who's got the toes out. Sam for Soccer giving the fans the free toe content whenever that player camera comes out. But then over to Scary D, a little bit more serious, at least on the cam for the Solar Scares. Minute left on their bank time to figure out what they're going for their second and third pick. With the Chernobog up, not revealing a whole lot of their draft just yet.
Yeah, that's a fair point. The Chernobog is going to bring this global presence, notably. The Morgan is always a decent transformation when you have that Chernobog. Just that extra global presence that I think really just enhances a team fight whenever you're able to split up the map like that. We've already been talking about the fact that the Solar Scarabs have been liking to get active early and actually gonna grab the Mercury. Not even hovered. That was just snap blocked. And notably, before Mercury was in the meta, which, he's sort of fallen out as of now. Before that, Sam for Soccer was one of the pioneers of this character, playing it even when people were saying Mercury was bad, and then he became really good, and now he's sort of, under the radar, I'll call it. But if you're hitting the constant ultimates, if you're able to get that Rage online, get stack and crit early on, Merc is still that hard carry jungler that certainly can make an impact in a team fight, and I like to see it locked in here. I like to see that Sam's feeling confident enough to grab it this early on.
I mean, it was one of those kinds of picks when he was back over on the Jade Dragons where, as you said, when Mercury wasn't meta, he was still being banned away from Sam for Soccer because nobody wanted to deal with that one there. Mercury, Xing Chen, the top 3 for the Solar Scarabs. Hex Mambo pick up Fafnir before we jump into the second wave of the bans and picks of game number 2 between Hex Mambo and the Solar Scarabs. With the jungler, a carry, and at least potentially the dual lane, we'll call it for now, locked in. Plenty of options to take away from oBoronic. Kukulkan has been something that he's been going to, just kind of as a default of, oh, well, if nothing else is up, I might as well just go for something safe in that mid lane. Scary D, still the pick of the litter. I mean, the King Arthur available if he wants to go back to it as well.
Yeah, I think banning out the Soul Lane probably going to be a decent option, but actually going to be the AMC, so maybe fearing some double Hunter compositions here from the Solar Scarabs. Certainly something that the Scarabs have went to before. Obviously, oBoronic no stranger to playing the Hunters in the mid lane, but I think, you're right to highlight the fact that oBoronic has a few different options open, even with those Hunters being taken away. I still think the Morgan could be a decent option here. If you're looking to get active in the early, snowballing with double Chernobog ults or even double Mercury could be extremely detrimental if you're both laning this ult. Of course, if you just turn into Merc and you both just miss those Sonic Booms and you're just like, well, we just threw the fight, let's get out of here. So maybe a little bit too high execution for the Scarabs to want to go to there. But Mambo are thinking real hard about this ban because, they have thrown the ADCs into the mix, but of course there's still that option, the King Arthur, the Kukulkan, and there's some warriors up that I know Scary D would love to get his hands on this late in the draft.
I still have a really cool combo you could do with Morgan and Mercury, because we always talk about like the giant double circle, like double Fear No Evil,
right?
Double Cthulhu, all those kinds of things, double Ratatosker.
Of course.
It would be cool just to see 2 Mercuries where one dashes, picks up a target, throws it to the other Mercury who dashes again, throws them, then you have a Sonic Boom thrown in the middle, or like you.
Then you have a Xing Chen thrown back.
Oh my
God! You're playing ping pong.
then you throw a Sobek in the mix, so you throw him out of the Xing Chen into the and then you have a Sylvanas. Why not? Let's just throw that in the mix, so you get pulls for days between all of that. It would be something funny, but probably something that we will not see. At least not that full degree of combo. You can still get at least 3 of those pieces of the puzzle there if Morgan is the selection. But Dodgy, Set, AMC, and Olarun round out the final 4 bands of game number 2. Then a Heimdallr for Hex Mambo. Normally something we do see in the top 3 for the EU SEC teams when they're going up against each other with how contested that pick is. But not many North American teams, and especially not many SPL teams, are really looking towards this pick any longer. So Hex Mambo able to pick it up right after the ban phase.
Yeah, they do have some decent auto attack damage there with the Heimdallr and the Bellona. Notably, you know, again, if this Chernobog does go mid to Boronic, the Cupid is still a pretty decent option here into this composition.
I am Yemoja.
But it looks like they
Do
are
not
going to make that
forget.
pivot. Send Xing over to solo, where Scary D can pilot it up against the Bellona. A decent matchup here. Last time,
Season 2?
I was going to say, like, Season 2, Season 3 Worlds, the best solo laners in the world at that time. And they are going to grab the Cupid. So the Stupid comes back.
Stupid is back.
I'm loving this.
Xing versus Bellona solo, Season 2-esque out there. Good lord, kind of some throwback compositions that the Solar Scarabs are running out here. A lot of auto attack damage. And the Chungle comes back once again. The one thing that you wanted to see from Hex Mambo pivot in Game 2 will not be the case. Coming back out and now for Hex Mambo once again on Dzoni.
Is this the price I have to pay? Getting the run back of the Stupid, I have to deal with the Chungle now. I guess if that's the cost, then I suppose I will simply accept it. You know, the Mamba had just played into a very similar composition, right? I know that there was a little bit of difference here, but you know, the Xing and the Cupid are back. Now you have to deal with the global pressure from the Chernobog. There's still a fair bit of CC here, and throw River's Rebuke into the mix. Not going to be easy. However, I will say, a little bit less early presence here from the Solar Scarabs. You got double ADC, triple if you count Merc. You're looking to play late game. You want to get that itemization online, and that plays right into Hex Mambo's hand. They have the Bellona for those ADCs. Deathwalker, I'm going to say, has a lot of weight on his shoulders currently, right? He's going to have to deal with the majority of these hunters and try and shut them down with the disarms, the block stacks just being a menace in the backline. That's his job. He's been doing it for a while, but the cards are on the table, and I guess they're in his hands. Are you gonna fold, or are you gonna raise? You could call, but it's not gonna work. You're already down one game, so you need to go big here, Deathwalker. That's what I'm saying.
For sure. Solar Scarabs, though, as you say, maybe geared a little bit more towards the late game. Cupid, kind of okay in lane. Throw Yemoja there, and there usually should be at least some pressure in the dual lane, but I mean, Xing's not really a pressure god in solo lane. That's kind of a stalemate handshake over there. Mid lane, Chernobog takes a little bit to ramp up. So for the Solar Scarabs to get to that late game, Charlie, where does that pressure need to be allocated, at least for Sam for soccer, to try and make sure that his team can get to that point?
I mean, honestly, I don't think Sam has to do much,
anything?
right? Because Mambo's not going to bring it. They're going to say, hey, we're going to sit back until late. And the Scarabs are going to say, hey, we have a composition that we think we can go toe-to-toe with you, or at least win in that late game. So they don't have to force anything. However, if Sam wants to get raid stacks on Mercury, which usually is the name of the game, right? You get that online, you get kills as soon as possible. I mean, you got to look at the duo lane, and that's not an easy task. Bellona's never going to be easy to gank for a Merc. The disarm is just so annoying, and as long as those ults are hitting. But you have a fair bit of CC, right? Whirlwind of Rage to Steel into Sonic Boom, or vice versa. One of them forces the Eagles rally, the other one gets that grab, unless Deathwalker goes into the beats early. Solo lane's probably your best option, but it's still not easy.
A late game slanted comp for the Solar Scarabs, a late game slanted style of play for Hex Mambo. Game number 1 was 1440 before we saw First Blood. What's your over-under on this one, Charlie, before we see First Blood? Under that 14 or over?
Under, hopefully.
Under. Hopefully an under. We'll see if Hex Mambo can bring it back and take us to a Game 3, or will the Solar Scarabs take it away? We'll throw it over to Dimes and Gore for Game 2.
Thank you, J-Mac. I think we're also looking forward to maybe a little bit more action in game number 2 here. Hex Mambo fighting into the Solar Scarabs. You mentioned a couple gods in game number 1. Echrome on this Heimdallr and the Chaac jungle. You said you wanted to see a shakeup. The Hex Mambo say, nah, let's run it back.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is gonna work out well for him. I'm like, just blanket statement up front. I don't know that those two picks did real well last game. I don't know that they're going to do that well this game. I will say though, I like what they've changed around it. Right? I think, well, even though it's only one really small change, and that is the Bellona.
Yeah.
I think that I like Deathwalker on this Bellona. I think that gives you a little bit more aggression, maybe able to jump in there, get something more done than what the Ares was able to do. And I also think that Zyrhoes was really solid on this Huang. So theoretically, there might be some opportunities for them. Sam's now on Mercury as opposed to the Ravana, so maybe going to take a little longer to get online. Boronic's going to be playing a Hunter, so if you get some more physical protection here, I think as the Mambo, and specifically like Dzoni just weaves one item in potentially to that build, you're going to be tanky enough, I think, for a lot of these engagements. So the opening is going to be there for the Mambo.
I mean, when you
But
look,
they got handled in lane.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
that's where my problem is.
I mean, you just read my mind.
Yeah.
When you look at the Stupid and Inbound here on this Yemoja,
just-
I mean, Inbound starting off game number 1 with that Xing, right, does provide some pressure with that roar. Of course, the once level 5 hits the whirlwind of Rage of Steel is a great initiator as well, but Inbound is known to have one of the best, if not the best, Yemojas in the game. I mean, it kind of made their name on this Yemoja, right? Coming up in the league, this Stuart Inbound lane is going to be absolutely nasty pushing against this Rottwen Echrome lane.
Yeah, I think that Stuart, I mean, look, on his own, he was forcing Echrome's beads and ult like every minute or so. I guess every 3 minutes once the beads came up. So I think like Stuart alone in the 1v1 is feeling fine. Inbound, like you said, someone who has done a lot of work to get to this point where their Yemoja is as strong as it is. Sometimes, and you know, depending on the set that you open it up, there will definitely be some interesting position, let's call it, from Inbound. But for the most part, I think lately, like you said, very much a clean pick. Rottwen, I think, played well. It's one of those things last game. You lost, and I can't think of anything where I looked at it and said, Rottwen lost them that game because of X, Y, or Z. So I think that you're going into a spot where you're in a fine spot, but duo lane, 2v2-wise, you've got Cupid Hearts, you've got Yemoja healing, you've got Heart Bomb, and then eventually Fields of Love with River's Rebuke. Like, they're just going to run this lane. I don't think that there's a point where I really see it transitioning over in favor of Echrome, unless he gets like just the most insane 1v1 when Stuart's ult is down.
At least very now in the jungle as the 2v2 kicks off in the solo lane here. Deathwalker is going to be forced back, but Johnny's here to join the party as well. Scary D being forced. One leap used, still one leap in the tank. There it goes. On the Xing Chen there as Deathwalker and Johnny combine on this blue buff respawn on the right side, but action on the other side of the map as well. Bit of a split fight for the Mambo and the Scarabs as Johnny's focusing down this blue buff. It will go to the side of the Hex Mambo, so stripped away there from Scary D. A minor win here for Hex Mambo. As I was saying, Sam and Johnny now a little bit more on the same page, maybe allowing their builds to pop off before they get active, on this Mercury especially.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be kind of interesting to watch Johnny's, I want to say, like, transition through this. Looks like he's going for the Transcendence a lot earlier, this build, so I think he's going to have a lot more damage, maybe quicker. And I think the same thing can be said. Like, Sam, what we normally see first item Rage for Mercury's, I guess I wouldn't be too surprised to see that, or any kind of crit, anything that he's picking up. But at the same time, Mercury's like your late game guy.
As Inbound is targeted out here, Rottwen forced away as well. Doesn't look like a kill is going to pop off in this early game, in the duo lane at least. Might come a little bit later. We still have, what, 11 more minutes to work with before we reach the 14-minute mark. So plenty of time for that, for Charlie's prediction to come true there. As Sam has made yet another rotation over to the solo lane. Deathwalker is looking quite low on mana. And guess what? oBoronic has hit level 5. Nightmares in on this Chernobog. Picks up the first blood. Clock it 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah, look, Boronic, I honestly forgot about the Chernobog. I don't know how.
Like, who is that? What?
Yeah, all of a sudden, anything that's a 2v2, 2v1, 3v1 in that case, in the blink of an eye there. Good rotation from him. I think that's something that Zyrhoes is going to have trouble with. And that's always the downside when there's a Chernobog anywhere on the map, right? If he can just close his eyes, press 4, and then end up elsewhere, it's going to cause a lot of trouble for the other team and outmatch their rotations.
Echrome using that Bifrost to escape the clutches of Stuart there. Rottwen forced out. Great combination from the Heart Bomb and the Moonstrike and the Bubbles and what feels like Yemoja's 12 different abilities that she can access at any given time. oBoronic fighting over these mid lanes here. Scary D clears out the buff. And like you were saying, Boronic on this Chernobog, we kind of touched on the duo lane, touched on Sam Scary as well. Echrome is going to send a member of the Solar Scarabs through the realms. Inbound and Stuart continuing the aggression, and before Sam can even touch back down, Inbound picks up kill number 2 for their team. Rottwen's here to play, but with no ADC to help out, that Fafnir's just going to be like, let me grab this away from Stuart.
You honestly might need to play it a little carefully. I mean, Fields of Love is down, so you're not going to be too stressed about that, but you're not clearing this wave any faster than Stuart's going to. Sam's still over here. I think the Scarabs are just playing that clean, right? I think that's a good rotation from Sam to be present on the map. You just got a great kill over on right, get a kill over on left. You get level 5 first. You kind of flex around on that one, and while you do get sent through the realms for a little while there, specifically from Echrome, it just showcases once again where I think a lot of the strengths for the Scarabs duo lane lies. I don't think that this Cupid has a lot to worry about. And the few moments last game that Stuart maybe was stressed out, it was a simple beads, right? And a dash, and then you're just gone. Exactly. So I think that we're in probably a great spot for the Scarabs in the side lanes. And Boronic got first blood. He's going to be feeling more than fine. It might not match the ability damage output that a Huang can have early on, but as long as he continues kind of going on the path that he's going, late game, 2 auto attackers for the Scarabs, 3 auto attackers really because of Mercury, you're going to burn down objectives. You're going to burn down towers. You're going to burn down tanks. I think the Hex Mambo as a whole are going to have to be worried about that.
Big time. And speaking of Hex Mambo here, we saw Zyrhoes looking great on this Huang in game number 1, right? A spot of light in the darkness for Hex Mambo. Echrome already off to a 0-1 start. You would love to get your ADC ahead early, especially on someone as powerful as the Heimdallr. Took a spill early on, definitely not the end of the game for the ADC. But is this Huang where you're really looking for something to make happen? I mean, Dzoni wasn't super impactful on the Chaac.
Yeah.
That could change in game number 2, but Huang really sticks out to me on this Hex Mambo squad as the player to look at.
Honestly, I agree, and I think a lot of that, it might just be game 1 bias, right?
Yeah,
like I watched a lot of this comp fail in game number 1, and where's its strengths? Zeros, hitting insane abilities, lots of good damage, things like that. I think more than anything, he's capable of doing it again. But it's the question now of the team around him, because it feels like the Scarabs have just stepped up.
And Oboronic baiting in Rottwen here, who's forced into that Draconic form. A Moonstrike is going to lock down the Fafnir. Great CC and a better Riptide. Out of the Yemoja, going to lock in Rottwen. Oboronic picking up yet another for this mid lane Chernobog, and that feels great. We've seen Oboronic on this Chernobog a couple of times, a few times, and I mean, great every time. Always a strong mage character, but can certainly pick up these hunters when need be.
And has played this one, like you said, very cleanly. Good aggression, good use of the ult so far. The only thing that it's going to have that's lacking from last game is a big secure around an objective.
Uh-oh, that Bifrost was directly into Inbound, and the double Riptide is actually going to catch Echrome, forces out the ultimate, so that's a win. You get an ultimate from the ADC for a simple rotation, not even an ultimate usage or anything necessary there from the Yemoja. Oboronic uses the dash, so no escape from Dzoni here, who slams down with that massive axe to Chaac, chasing out this Chernobog. Just 2 more autos is going to do it, but the Cherno is able to escape, so Dzoni uses that ultimate for nothing, not even a set of back camps to strip away from the Solar Scarabs.
Yeah, I want to say a little bit of luck and a little bit of timing that works well for Oboronic, right? Axe not being available, not willing to dive the tower, level 8, that's a good call from Dzoni. I think things go poorly if you step up under there. But unfortunately, it feels like you lose out on so much because of it, right? Like, that could have been such an easy kill. If Oboronic had wanted to, especially with Inbound's positioning, he could have just ulted in. In fact, he might still be doing it with that River's Rebuke.
River's Rebuke has been used, but Zero is able to use the Celestial Flight to get out of those crashing waves. Beads utilized as well. Rottwen now in between Inbound and Oboronic, but tanky is the Fafnir. Charging forward, Dzoni has joined the fray as well. Inbound forced out of this fight. The Dueling Dragons connects, but Scary D is here as well from the solo lane. Oboronic finds Zyrhoes. Dzoni dropping down to half HP. The teleport option is available, and Johnny's going to take it. Is able to escape to that tier 1 tower.
Yeah, I think, again, just good pressure from the Scarab. Scary D's rotation, not only making it over to mid, but going behind the tier 1 at this point in the game. Aggressive, and it works out, right? He gets all the damage that he needs, and he gets to play it the way his team needed him to, especially because they burned down, like you said, the flight there from Zyrhoes, as well as the beads, so it was like, oh, hey, Xing Chin, why don't you just have a kill right here, laid out in front of you? Your offering, sir. It made things, I think, a very simple and easy engagement for the Scarabs. Very one note, let's just fight, and so they do, and they win. On top of that, it's a little bit of damage coming back their way, and they don't get out unscathed, right? You're missing a couple of relics at the end of it. Definitely going to have some shaky moments, but I don't think they're worse for wear. I think that the biggest thing that's slowing them down this game and maybe not allowing them to flex as hard into like a gold lead as heavily as in game number 1 is, again, Oboronics on a Chernobog and not playing something like an Eset. And also, it's sub 10 minutes still. It's not, unless you're going for a Gold Fury, there's nothing to get. You have to wait for this Pyromancer. And unfortunately, if I'm looking at the Mambo, you haven't been getting a lot of good picks. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. Great picks have been getting grabbed by the Scarabs. So I'm looking at this Pyromancer that's spawning in now and thinking it's going to be a pretty easy rotation for the Scarabs to make. I'm looking at that Gold Fury, and I'm thinking, you know what? 12 minutes in, that seems like it's going to be very easy to try and scoop up. Again, maybe with a kill preceding it. But the Scarabs haven't been really lacking in that department.
With no circle of protection on the Eset from Oboronic to secure the objectives, are you looking at Stuart in this field of love in order to lock down the gold for you, specifically on that left-hand side?
Yeah.
Oboronic brings plenty of power, right, on that Chernobog when we're talking about the Pyromancer. The Gold Fury, maybe a little bit more up in the air, especially with the dueling dragons and that Phoenix Flame out of Zyrhoes, incredibly powerful, secure mechanisms.
I think yes and no, right? Like, I think it's the best secure they have on it, but mostly because, again, like a denial of field, right? If I'm Bellona, I don't want to jump into the field. If I'm Rottwen, I don't want to jump in there. It's just going to be bad news. I think that the damage will be helpful no matter what.
This Bellona might have to use that ultimate just to escape the Solar Scarabs. Eagles rally over the wall, but guess who's here to meet you? It's Inbound. No River's Rebuke quite yet. Spin to win from Scary D. Comes out, and finally there are the waves not locking in any members of Hex Mambo there. Maybe a little bit ill-placed out of Inbound, and the Hex Mambo able to disinitiate there. Dzoni having to burn the ultimate to get out of the hands of Scary D and Sam for Sonker, and now just a convoluted fight. A bit of smack talk more than anything.
Yeah, I think, like you said, clean disengage to just get out of there, and good from them to be able to keep themselves alive. Otherwise, that's catastrophic, right? I think if Inbound locks in Deathwalker, you're going to see things turn around. If this solo kill goes through, it's devastating there for Echrome. That's well played by Stuart. Another big stew moment for him.
Across the map, the Solar Scarabs are finding kills as Dzoni falls as well. 2 members of Hex Mambo fall into the grave at the hands of the Solar Scarabs, and you got to think that opens the door for a Gold Fury, a Pyromancer, a tower push, something. Maybe a blue buff invade here by Scary D, but kind of quiet out of the Solar Scarabs after finding a double kill across the entire map.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't immediately get aggressive. I guess it's because they didn't need to, right? They still have 10 seconds before Johnny's back. They forced Rottwen and specifically Deathwalker to fall back and feel a little more awkward, but now they don't have the same amount of control here.
And not too much zoning potential. No River's Rebuke online. Solar Scarabs are able to secure this Pyromancer against this Fafnir, who isn't done yet. Zyrhoes is rotating around the corner on this Huang. But no, the ability to initiate has already passed. The time is over. So Hex Mambo don't respond to the Pyromancer. Solar Scarabs utilize that window of opportunity to pick up the objective for themselves and open up this gold lead just a little bit more. It's only, we're approaching 13 minutes here, 6-0 for the Solar Scarabs, but the gold lead is pretty tight here for Hex Mambo. It's not getting out of control quite yet.
Yeah, and I think that's more or less what they need to keep at it, right? If you can stay pressured around like a Gold Fury, potentially getting the Gold Fury would be pretty good for them, but I definitely think that just keeping the Scarabs from making the spiral out of control, because right now you're going to feel the impact of it. Most of it's going to be like a tier 1 or a tier 2 where you don't have one, things like that. But as the game goes on, if it continues at this rate, all of a sudden they've got tier 3s over you. They're knocking down towers with ease, things like that. So I think if you can make it plateau here, or ideally pull a little back in your favor, then I think that'll open up a lot more at least play opportunities for the Mambo. Right now, I mean, you had kind of mentioned it, like when their engage tools are off the map. I don't know if I like their fight for a lot of it. I think last game I was like a little one over because of CC and stuff, and you know, Bellona does good damage, but the Chaac game last time didn't impress me enough to make me think, yes, this guy's going to be able to do it. And I don't know that, you know, Echrome this time around, he at least managed to survive the lane phase before. Now he's getting soloed by Stuart in moments like that. I think unless it's Zyrhoes going huge or some really, really nuts top-end play from Mambo, they have a lot to work on.
Sam for Sonker charging up this ultimate, fires it out from the Mercury. Echrome forced into the beads just a little bit earlier. You remember Echrome was forced to use the ultimate defensively, so that's not online for the ADC. It is falling there to the Solar Scarabs. And once again, across the map, split aggression here as Inbound wants to find a few members of Hex Mambo. Oboronic is here with that Nightmare. Dzoni able to rotate away using Chuck's teleport. Sprint is popped as well, so able to escape are that mid trio from Hex Mambo. Scary D pushing the issue on this right side as well. And as Gold Fury started up here and burned very quickly out of the Solar Scarabs, Rottwen rotating in has that Draconic form available. Solar Scarabs destroyed the Gold Fury, so both major map objectives in that Pyromancer and the Gold Fury, minus the Fire Giant, of course, now having been confirmed by the Solar Scarabs. Gold lead comes up to a respectable about, now what, 3,000-ish gold for the Solar Scarabs, now really opening the door 15 minutes in.
I mean, yeah, at this rate, like you said, with 15 minutes, that's a lot of gold to be working with that you're going to have over the other team. And again, split among 5 people. That's 700-ish gold. It's tier 1 or, you know, upgrade to a tier 2, things like that for a lot of them. Ward coverage maybe going to come through if you wanted to, upgraded relics, et cetera, et cetera. A little bit of gold for everybody on this side of the map. And it kind of instills the thing I was trying to knock home before, which is like, what do the Mambo do? And normally, I'm supposed to answer them, but you get a huge silence, maybe a big stun. The problem has been, again, just kind of disconcerted. They haven't been able to figure out how to deal with it. The Scarabs have been on top of the rotations, and they're not being matched. I mean, Chaac is like, he has negative potential to gank compared to something like a Mercury. I mean, Mercury can gank you from your own lane. He can be there. You can see him.
Right.
And he's still going to somehow surprise you with his ult or being able to kind of dash forward. He has Blink as well. And so I think there's just a lot of opportunities the Scarabs have capitalized on that we haven't gotten to see out of the Mambo. So I stopped looking at lanes. I stopped looking at ganks. I stopped looking in the jungle. Yep. I look at the team as a whole. What can they do around team fights? I think they've got some really good team ultimates, but it's fighting into a pretty big deficit now. You've got 2 levels in mid that you're down, 2 levels in support. I'm going to call it 2.5 for Echrome because he just ticked over to 14. And it starts to feel really uncomfortable when you're going into these fights because your damage dealers just won't hit as hard as the other side.
Dzoni making their way into this left lane. Sanford following as well, charging up that Sonic Boom over and over and over as Mercury players are wont to do, right? Get that clap going, waiting for the initiation here. Inbound doesn't connect with the Moonstrike. That could have been a great opportunity to kick things off here. Sam really would love to keep this going, but you can't waste time hovering around lanes when there's jungle to be farmed, right? You have to keep up that farm, especially at this high level. You got to keep the GPM going up and up and up. And you were just talking about team fight from the Hex Mambo, right? We can't ignore the Solar Scarabs team fight, which is incredible as well.
Yeah.
The Rivers Rebuke separating the fight out as Deathwalker forced to use that Eagles Rally just to secure their own blue there. Scary D with the big washing machine, you know, Stuart, massive fields of love. The Hex Mambo have to take a team fight, but they're team fighting into just as good, if not better, of a roster in terms compositionally of the Solar Scarabs.
I'm glad you said it, because I was thinking the exact same thing, where I'm just like, man, you're right. The Scarabs draft just kind of does everything the Mambo draft wants to do, but better. Their healing is team-wide. Their CC, their team ults, are bigger and more controlling and better in the midst of a fight. The one thing they have going for them, again, I think is safety. I think Echrome, Heimdallr, you look at Huang, both very safe, survivable for Chaac, I would argue. And so a lot of potential disengage for the Mambo. I don't want disengage, though, right? I mean, that's not how you get back into a game, is by, running away from the fights. You have to be able to be present.
Yeah, this Pyromancer is just gone. The Solar Scarabs grab that one. Have to use the Cupid ultimate to do so, as Inbound isn't quite done yet. Rivers Rebuke out onto this Deathwalker. oBoronic gonna pick up the kill. Crashing through the fight is Sanford with that Sonic Boom just for the CC. Blinks out, but blinks directly into this Huang. Doesn't engage though. Celestial Flight out. Here comes Scary D with that washing machine. Echrome chunked down with that major look from the Mercury, and Oboronic wants a little bit more.
Hey, look, some good relic usage, Aegis, things like that, keeping the Scarabs alive. Dzoni might just get caught out here. That's a really good teleport to his axe. But it just leaves a wide open field. Look, they burn a lot of relics. Echrome's unsafe. Zyrhoes was forced out. Kept both his relics, though, which I think is just an impressive feat. And they managed to keep the Scarabs from going too far ahead. I thought for sure that was going to be a Fire Giant call and an easy pull for them. And we get to see, I think, some clapback from the Scarabs where things could have been a very overwhelming fight for the Scarabs. We see the Mambo slow them down. It's silences, it's heals, it's getaways. Again, disengage, which they're really going to have a good job of. But team ults, we get to see a great Rivers Rebuke. Fields of Love finds a lot of pressure early on. And if those relics aren't used, it's going to be a much easier kill than a 4v5 that the Scarabs just start to run it down. So it's worrisome, right? It's a pattern that I think staying alive is going to do you well for only so long. Because if the farm, the objectives, the things after that fight, even if you live, don't go your way, you're not going to be able to find anything on the map. Luckily, there's not been a lot in terms of, I think, like grand scheme map play. There's a Pyromancer, 1 Gold Fury, nothing crazy. And so the Scarabs, their lead has stagnated. Still comfortable, but it at least has the reins pulled on it to slow them down, keeping the Mambo somewhat in contention.
Sam finishing up these rage stacks, already has 3 on the item. Capping off this Obo here is the Cupid. Rottwen forced out. Oni Fury is online. And the Solar Scarabs are targeting this one down. Inbound using that Rivers Rebuke to create some space as the Oni Fury is still the target here. Zyrhoes moving in aggressively. We got a couple of dragons here on Hex Mambo between Rottwen and Zyrhoes, sending out those dueling dragons. Got a dragon on that Fafnir as well in that draconic form, which is going to disappear sooner rather than later. And there we go. So already the Fafnir burning that ultimate, but does force the Solar Scarabs off this Oni Fury. Sam has so much potential with all of these crit numbers. You can see the 400 popping up over and over and over. Rottwen caught in that Riptide. Scary D has made the rotation as well. Bellona wrapping around the corner. Pulls back in Rottwen with no ultimate available. Stuart finds the first kill on the support, so it's a 4v5 with a relatively healthy Solar Scarabs. Still charging forward, and heals coming from the Yemoja as well.
Yeah, with Inbound keeping them all tapped off, they're going to be just fine with how their health is going. The damage is still there. In fact, they want the fight.
Yeah, they're not done here.
Oh my
Stuart
God.
taking out Echrome early on. Dzoni not finding too much value. Zyrhoes forced out of the fight as well. It's Deathwalker caught in between 5, and that's just not going to happen. You're not old school Bellona. You are current Bellona. Sam for Soccer picks up Zyrhoes for the first kill for Sam in this contest. And now it looks like a mid lane tower is going to be next on the menu, or why not just the Fire Giant?
Yeah, at this point, what's Dzoni going to do? Look at you menacingly? There's nothing that I can see this Chaac doing. Without his ult, yeah, this Fire Giant should just be pretty much in their favor. Granted, they don't have a crazy secure. So keep your eyes on Rottwen. We've seen too many Fafnir hammers this year that have gotten something done for the team.
Fafnir, Hammer, Kepri, Root, right? The tick damage into that Draconic form. Rebuke out as well. Solar Scarabs do destroy the Fire Giant, but Sam is going to fall in return. But here's Stuart picking up that double kill for a soft deicide on the Hex Mambo, and that makes it 7-0-3 for Stuart. Going big Stuart mode here in game number 2.
Yeah, look, when you're 7-0-3 for Stuart, those at 5-0-5 for oBoronic, I mean, you're just having some great games from your carries, which once again points towards what Sam's been able to do. A lot of fantastic setup, I think, out of the jungle. Same for both the frontliners. The Scarabs are here to play, and they're playing well on top of the Mambo. And even though you lose Sam there, and chat, I encourage you, meme him for being the guy that's feeding on the Scarabs just because it's funny,
kill.
right? He's the only one who died. But you trade him for, like you said, a soft deicide. You trade him for a majority pressure on the map. You get a Fire Giant. You get more kills. And I don't think that Sam's really that worse off for him. And if anything, it just gets him back to base a little bit quicker so he can buy his items faster.
Get those rage stacks going.
Rejoin for the rest of the crew. So I think that this is something that, again, maybe not the best looking fight for the Scarabs. It's nowhere near the worst thing that could have happened to him either. I think pressure-wise on the map, Tier 1 and right doesn't exist. I like where they're pressuring up. I mean, immediately going for left. Echrome might just get deleted. And so it's been a perpetual stagger. I mean, the Mambo have not been at full force for like 3 full minutes, if not longer. And at this point, with 2 carries, a minion wave soon to be on the way. Not just any minion wave, an Oni minion wave on the way. I think that you're going to be able to pressure down Tier 2 left, or Tier 2 and left, and the Phoenix pretty easily without having to worry about what Hex Mambo has to offer.
This Tier 1 tower is going to disappear sooner rather than later. Zyrhoes forced him that Celestial Flight and the Dueling Dragons as well. oBoronic has joined the fray on this mid laner, and that's mid laner on mid laner crime right there.
Yeah.
As Zyrhoes falls for the next 45 seconds, going to spend that time in the grayscale regretting their actions. And Hex Mambo with their Phoenix on this left side being targeted down here by the Solar Scarabs, by the entire might of the 5-man squad. Actually inbound in this mid lane, clearing, proxying behind that Tier 2 tower. Scary D playing the frontliner here. It just feels like Solar Scarabs have a death grip on this game, and Hex Mambo really have no way back. I mean, we're reaching that gold league now, 11,000, where it's really rests on a Solar Scarabs catastrophic throw for Hex Mambo in order to fight back into this one here. Sonic Boom comes through onto Rottwen, forced away. Scary D's here for follow-up. Here comes the Heart Bomb, immuned out by the Draconic form, and the middle lane bird falls.
And look, you know what? You live there if you're Rottwen. Honestly, if anything, that's a big win for your team. Because otherwise you lose, I think. If Rottwen goes down there, they just keep aggressing into the Titan room, and they don't have to think too much about it. Downside, there's still over a minute left in the power play, and there's plenty of opportunities for the Scarabs on the map. I'm surprised they aren't going to knock down this Tier 2 immediately just for the extra gold, but I think it's just because they have so much they can do. Bobble, just now, I think this is the second Bobble that we've seen, and it's scooped up there by Inbound, which realistically is going to be fun to see, again, playing maybe off the passive, stuff like that. And of course, having Anything less than 140 seconds on the ult is going to feel great, man. Let me tell you.
Big time.
And so I'm excited to see that one. But you're getting a Silver Branch bow pick up there for Stuart. You finish off and get a Deathbringer glyph on the side of oBoronic. Everybody gets just a massive power spike. And when you've already got this, like you said, kind of death grip on the map, you're feeling pretty confident. And hell, they still have 20 seconds of Fire Giant somehow. Feels like this thing has just never ended. And while it might not be enough to win them the game outright, they could and should be able to get this tier 2. Probably won't be able to pressure the Phoenix too heavily, but they'll be able to be in maybe just the best positioning for the next FG that you could be.
Yeah, Hex Mambo have one more fight in them before this Titan goes down, and they're living on a prayer here.
Might happen here.
It's going to happen right here. I can guarantee that much, Gore, as the Solar Scarabs run it down this right-hand lane. Sam for Soccer looping around this jungler route in the middle lane with that Sonic Boom, can cut right through that mid lane Phoenix and join the rest of their party on the right side here. But Dzoni has met the action in the middle lane and responded to it. Scary D leading the charge for the Solar Scarabs here. It's going to take an absolute miracle from the Hex Mambo, who are choosing a deity of their choice here. Scary D going forward. Rottwen forced out. Heart Bomb used from the Cupid. Heals up from Yemoja to keep the Solar Scarabs topped off. Scary D just over half HP here. Deathwalker on the forefront of this defense for Hex Mambo. Rottwen CC'd out. Look for a big River's Rebuke or Fields of Love to kick things off here, Gore.
Yeah, I think if anyone steps out too far from the Mambo, they're just going to die. The isolation tactics that the Mambos are going to have, or sorry, that the Scarabs are going to have, is just going to be too much. And like you said, that's a huge crit on the side of Sam. You got to be worried about what this Mercury is able to do. Look, you talk about him as a late game hyper carry in terms of a god. It's late game, and he is ready to hyper carry if need be. He might not even get the kills. I look at the slash lines again, 1, 1, and 9. Might not be the best looking thing there for Sam in terms of kill potential. But when you've got a mid who's 6-0 and 6 and a carry who's 8-0 and 3, you're fine.
If you're Hex Mambo here, you try to fight that Fire Giant, but there's just no shot as Rottwen is forced out. Scary D here with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, cashing Echrome and burning those beads.
Good
Rottwen
walls.
locked into the Fields of Wall. Great walls there from Yemoja. Echrome's going to go down to the might of the Mercury. Sam picking up another one. Veronica with a double kill to go 8-0 and 7 on this Chernobog. Scary D rushing forward. The rest of the Solar Scarabs following right behind their solo laner. This right lane Phoenix is going to go down to clear all of Hex Mambo's birds, and the only thing left is this Titan room. Zyrhoes and Dzoni have to put up some sort of miracle defense and make that just Dzoni, make that nobody. Hex Mambo decided. The Titan soon to follow Solar Scarabs with a convincing 2-0 over the #1 EU SCC seeded team.
And look, man, that one's clean. I'm going to say that originates in the draft. I think we saw in Game 1 that, 8/5 of what was there in Game 2 didn't work. I think there were a lot of high notes for him. Huang, not necessarily anything I'm upset about. The Fafnir, not really anything I'm that upset about. But I don't think the Heimdallr worked that well into the Cupid. And maybe they locked it in thinking, oh, well, Cherno's on the other side. That'll be a matchup we can take. Then Cupid got locked in, and it's like, okay, well, now you're just worse for wear there. And I don't think that the jungle here for Dzoni got to be anywhere near as impactful as we got used to seeing him in some of the Impact games. So I'm thinking that Chaac maybe was not the call. I'm trying to think of any moments there where I was like, yeah, that's the Chaac play. Maybe a couple silences from the ult. But for the most part, I think the Scarabs just came in. They had a good draft. They played that draft incredibly well, got off to a great start, and it led to a very, very easy end for them.
The only lesson to take away here, you gotta ban the stupid. A couple of handsome gentlemen on the desk to break it down for us. Take it away, boys.
That does refer to us.
Yeah.
So, Solar Scarabs with a 2-0 over Hex Mambo. The stupid popping off big in game number 2. And unfortunately, the smack talk for Deathwalker didn't quite work out for his team, as it is the Solar Scarabs. And at least in his eyes, they may be the worst SPL team, but worst SPL team still better than the #1 EU SCC team, at least in this set. Some highlight plays, at least out of Hex Mambo, able to find a pick at least during those games. A game #1, very clean early game by Hex Mambo, but when it comes down to the farming and the late game style of play, the SPL teams have that level of talent to do so, even with the Solar Scarabs coming in with their new junglers, Sam for Soccer, kind of off a bit of a cold week in the final week of SPL. Certainly do not look cold in this set, Trelly.
No, definitely not. You can't be giving up the stupid, and you can't be giving up the Bellona. Everyone knows that. I mean, that's common household knowledge. The double hunter composition went big, and the stat lines from both of those ADCs, I mean, mid ADC, but you get the point. They went crazy. And of course, the tanks doing their jobs. Bobby on the Yemoja was setting up for the squad as much as you would like, and the Xing Chen from Scary D also. Just is like Sam Soccer didn't have the greatest stat line because he was just like, I'll set up for you guys, and then you guys get the kills. I don't need the last hits here. I was talking about rage stacks and early Mercury ganks, but he didn't care about that. He was just like, hey, I'll be the charitable donator to my team to make sure that you get all the last hits, and it worked out, right? They had the damage online, and you know what? I think the biggest part was that Inbound was looking the part, you know? It looked like he was about to head on a safari, and it brought the team up. I think that's what I'm going to attribute this attest to.
And I do got to give some credit over at least to the dual lane, Echrome specifically on this Heimdallr. You're playing into not so great of a matchup there. But early on, a couple of kills in that dual lane do get thwarted by him specifically. He was zoning I almost called him stupid again. Zoning Stuart away on the Cupid to make sure that at least Rottwen was able to make it out. Inbound was setting up so many great riptides, stun combos throughout the entirety of this game. Whether it was in the dual lane, whether it was in the mid lane, did not matter. Inbound, we can no longer talk about, Inbound for on Yemoja. We might as well chalk this up to a loss. Inbound has been looking extremely good on this pick. Had so many perfect setups throughout this game. This ult in particular splits the fight into 3 parts. You have 2 on the side where all the Scarabs are. You have 1 in the middle fighting 2, and you have the other guys who are just like, you have fun over there.
Yeah,
I hope you're having a fun time.
How's it going? You guys winning? We're not.
Neither were they on any of those parts of the river there. So great setup by the Solar Scarabs, able to find themselves a 2-0 victory over Hex Mambo. They push themselves to the winner's side of the bracket. Hex Mambo will move on to the loser's bracket, and they're going to have to fight their way back for their second chance in.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't seem like they ever had an avenue back into the game. Obviously, once these double ADC compositions got rolling, it was just a little bit too much. So maybe back to the drawing board, so to speak. I know we talked about that for game 2, but now, the mom will get to back to the hotel, watch a little bit, just pay attention to what everyone else is doing and get prepared for their next matchup. And I think, it's one thing to show up and play great on day 1, but be able to take a loss, go home, and then, just theorize what's going to work, what's not going to work, a different style of draft, whatever it may be to get your team up to that next level. Once that comes through, those are the teams that are really going to succeed in a tournament like this. So I'm excited to see what the minds of Hex Mambo are able to do with a little bit of a break and then come back strong next time.
Yeah, especially when you have a theory crafter kind of like Deathwalker on that team. Again, I always talk about how he was a pioneer from the solo lane back his times in the SPL. He would be like, what if I brought this into the solo lane into this matchup? And then he would kind of break that meta for a little bit. What if I bring Bellona back into the solo after we haven't seen her for like a year and a half and then pops off with her? So always some signs of light out of Hex Mambo. We'll see how they can fare against some of the other SCC squads as the remainder of their tournament life goes through. They're not out just yet. Remember, it is a double elimination inside of these groups, so even with a loss here by Hex Mambo, they can still fight back against the other SCC squad within their respective bracket. But we do have a post-game interview. Inbound and Coach Slaney standing by with Gormizer.
That's right. I got Inbound and Slaney standing here, looking beach ready. By the way, guys.
We're ready.
Absolutely
We're ready.
slamming it. Look, I'm going to talk a little bit about the set first. Inbound, things come out. This is a good win for you guys. After picking up Sam, things kind of being a shuffle, kind of forced on you over the last couple of weeks. How does it feel to get a win under the belt?
I mean, it's nice. It's going to be the start of many.
The start of many. I believe you. I'm trusting you here. Slaney, we were talking about this a second ago, but it had to feel kind of good for you. Like, game 2 starts up, and their draft is mostly the same as it goes. And what was going through your mind as game 2 was starting?
I mean, obviously they kind of ran back their draft. I guess it's just something that they were comfortable with. But it's kind of different when you're changing from first pick to second pick side. It adjusts how we wanted to play. Obviously, you can tell by the way that we drafted it was a lot different than the game 1. But obviously, when they lock in stuff like the Chaac jungle, you're just gonna feel a bit confident.
Got to celebrate.
Yeah, I was hoping for a Barber first pick from them, maybe, but no.
No luck, no such luck there. Look, since you're both looking beach ready, we've been talking about fruit, we've been talking about drinks, things like that, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to know, like, ideal beach day. What are you guys doing if you're going out there and sitting on the sand?
I'm just big into hydration. I'm just getting some water. Like, when you're out in the heat, like all day, the humidity, like you got to stay hydrated. So I'm just drinking water.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be drinking something else.
You're just hanging out. I was thinking, like, are you spending time in the waves? You trying to like bodyboard? You just relaxing?
Honestly, anything on the beach is just a blast. Like you could swim, you could just chill. Like beach volleyball. There's so many things to do on the beach, and all of them are fun.
This just popped in my head, so I have to ask this: who on the Scarabs is like most likely to get like ridiculously sunburned?
Oh, I think that has got to be me.
You?
100%.
I would say Ronnie
Do you
would
see this?
just
I'm blending with the
of
white
course.
shirt.
But Ronnie would just forget. Ronnie
That-
would just
okay.
lay out in the sun and
Ronnie would
forget
fall
that.
asleep
Yeah, he'd be like,
on the beach
oh,
and then
he'd wake
burn.
up and then just be like, as
He'd be
red
like,
as a
guys, I got
Yeah.
burnt.
Yeah.
Chris.
I don't know what
Either way,
happened.
guys, congratulations on your win. Hopefully there's a beach day in the future for you before things get too cold, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for your time. We'll kick it back to the desk.
Thank you.
So on the tier list of most likely to get sunburnt on the beach, it goes to Scary D and then Inbound right after that one. Always fun talking to the Solar Scares, especially when they're hot off of a win like that. And being able to at least start their tournament off with a 2-0 is kind of in the minds of really all the SPL teams, Charlie. Nobody wants to drop a game to the SCC. Nobody wants to drop a set to the SCC. They want to make sure they can have clean performances as they start moving in to face the remaining SPL talent that this tournament has to offer. Because remember, again, win for these SPL teams, a win for any of these teams during these games, meaning they get to move on to the upper side of the bracket, which we will get to take a look at least for this group now, and we can kind of see what we have to look forward to for the rest of our day throughout. But that's a tall task for the Solar Scarabs right after. They got their win on Hex Mambo. Now they're going to be facing off against the Olympus Bolts. That's going to be happening on day 4 of the event, which is Saturday, if I'm doing my math correctly. Tomorrow, we'll get to see Shabalba Storm and Hex Mambo face off in this bracket.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. The NA SCC versus the EU SCC. Finally, some rivalry there. Mambo versus the Storm. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to make sure to keep my eyes peeled, but you're right to highlight that. It's going to be a tall task there for the Solar Scarabs up against the Bolts, but both of them probably feeling confident coming off to a 2-win. And the Scarabs have always been a team in my mind that can take a game off of just about anybody depending on what kind of Smite they're playing the day of, so certainly will be an interesting one.
Scarabs always usually a team to play up to their competition, so it should be a fun one up against the Olympus Bolts. That's 3 sets down, 3 2-0s, and 1 more set to go. The Oni Warriors, our final SPL team, against the Highland Ravens, the final of the EU SCC teams, the 2nd seed of their respective regions. Some power players coming back, specifically adapting now back on that team. Should keep things interesting because that brings back a very old rivalry of Cuvo Fred versus adapting in the jungle.
You tell me the King's coming back?
I'm telling you, the King is back.
And you tell me in like 3 minutes that game started?
Well, it's a little bit more than 3
Give or
minutes,
take, but like in a bit.
yeah,
Just
three
right-
metric minutes.
And we're gonna be casting it?
we're gonna be casting.
That's
it.
gonna be crazy. I
That's
can't
gonna
wait.
be-
I'm
that's-
so excited
It's
now.
gonna be a nutty set. Oni Warriors, we know that these guys have had mostly a downward trend as of recent. They were kind of really hot at the start of the phase, but their last 5 or 6 sets have kind of been sloping a little bit down. Lost to the Scarabs, lost to the Valks. We'll see if the Oni Warriors can make their bounce back to start off Summer Masters. They'll be up against the Highland Ravens right after this break.